planning meeting today on a Thursday, which is unusual for us. We're usually the first Tuesday of the month. So we'll go on. I've got a few chair announcements and things to read out to you first. So if I do that, and then we will carry on with the meeting. Okay. Welcome everyone to the meeting. This meeting is taking place in the Council Chamber, Shepton Mallet, and we have members of the Planning Committee, officers, public speakers, and members of the public physically present in the chamber. We also have members of the public watching the meeting on Teams.
Nick, Chair, may I just interrupt and ask if Miss Sarah Hawker can switch off her camera, because we're seeing...
Oh, I see, yeah.
Just switch it off rather than hide it, because we can't see the council chamber, please.
Okay, can we switch this off? Tell me when you think I should start again, Helen. Please.
Could Mr. Hawker, actually, could you confirm if you switched your camera off rather than lower it? Because we're not able to see the screen. Do you think so? Yes, please.
Okay, we happy now? Okay, I'll start from the beginning again then, just so that everybody's absolutely clear. Okay, this meeting is taking place in the Council Chamber, Shepton Mallet, and we have members of the Planning Committee, officers, public speakers, and members of the public physically present in the chamber. We also have members of the public watching the meeting on Teams. Cameras within the council chamber allow us to film the meeting for viewers on Teams and also record the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded even if they are not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, then please let me know now. No, it doesn't look like anybody's put their hand up. Okay, members who have brought their own device with them should ensure that their cameras are switched off and, very importantly, their device, microphone and speakers are muted for the duration of the meeting. Otherwise, this causes feedback on the council sound system. Public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak by the chair. It is not permitted for any other member of the public viewing on by Teams to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any member of the planning committee wish to speak, please raise your hand and catch the attention of myself, the vice chair, Edric here, and or lead officers, Anna, and Simon isn't with us today, I don't believe. When the members in the chamber speak, remember to switch on your desk microphone so that all those in attendance and viewing can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within Teams for anything at all. All contributions must be made verbally. Please, can all mobile phones be set to silent, please? I've even switched my own off. Thank you. Okay, Edric, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to introduce the young woman sat next to me. This is Autumn. She's a sixth form student shadowing me. She's done a couple of meetings. She is not taking part in the meeting. She's just here to observe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Apologies for absence.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we have apologies from Councillor Helen Kay, who's on a leave of absence. No substitute for her this month. Councillor Susanna Hart, and we have Councillor Phil Ham as sub. Councillors Martin Lovell, Tony Robbins, Claire Sully, and unfortunately Adam Boyden last minute, who's unable to attend. Martin has something to say.
Yeah, Councillor Dunk would have normally substituted. He did send his apologies.
Yes, he did. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. I think next on my list is the minutes of the previous meeting. Okay, so we start at page 17. Once I find it. Okay, so here we go. So page 17, page 18, page 19, page 20, page 21, page 22, page 23, page 24, page 25, page 26, page 27, page 28, page 29, page 30, page 31, page 32, and page 33. Thank you. I think that's it. Okay. We now move on. Yes, Edric?
Proposer and seconder, please, Chair.
Pardon?
Proposer and seconder for minutes,
Oh, yeah.
please, Chair.
Obviously, yeah. So who's proposing? Okay, I think Dawn, you were first. Seconding will be Edric, I think. Thank you. So we're happy with that. Yep, we have a vote. Yes. All in favour? Yes, I can see you there. Yep, Benty. Yep. Martin. Right, okay, thank you. Okay, there's usually something here about public speakers, but it doesn't appear to be anything today. So we now go on to declarations of interest. Do we have any? Dawn, yeah.
I just wanted to mention that I'm acquainted with one of the applicants' brother. So Andy Fussel's brother, Tim, I'm acquainted with.
Thank you for that, Dawn. That's duly noted. Public question time.
Dawn, could you just say which agenda item that is, please?
Oh.
Just for the first one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You're happy, Helen? Yeah, you've got the right one. Okay, so public question time. I don't believe we have any, do we? No. Okay, so next we're going to move on to the planning application, land in the southeast of Bradford Road, Frome, Somerset, which is actually just outside of Somerset. And Nikki, I think you're in doing this one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. This application was considered by the Planning Committee in May and it was deferred. So it's an application for a solar farm on the edge of road. The reasons for the deferral in May were for the applicant to consider the access arrangements on Monkley Lane, to consider the scale of the development, particularly the quantum and the impact on landscape and heritage assets, in particular the conservation area and the listed buildings. Members also requested a site visit. So following that committee in May, the applicant has confirmed that Monkley Lane is no longer proposed for construction traffic, and a temporary construction access track is proposed via a different access 2. Panels have also been moved away from Flexham Farm, which is a listed building on Bradford Road, and there's enhanced landscaping proposed along Bradford Road. Amended plans have been shown for the inverters, and a member site visit has been undertaken, which was yesterday. I'll give a little refresher because I appreciate that some members have changed since the May committee, so it might be a first look for some of them and a refresher for others. So I'll go over the whole proposal and also the specific changes that we've had since the May committee and associated consultation. So this is the heritage assets in the local area. So the two purple areas are the conservation area, which is set into two parts in road. So those who kindly came on the site visit yesterday, thank you. We picked up some members in the centre of road here, and we did travel along Bradford Road across here, so members could appreciate the conservation area and the settlement and the proposed site in the context of that village with that conservation area and listed buildings. These are the footpath networks, so there's no proposed obstructions to the footpaths, which would all be retained, and there's planting mitigation proposed as necessary adjacent to them across the site. This is the layout. So members will hopefully remember that this application is submitted under the Rochdale principle. So this site layout plan is a worst case scenario of what is proposed, and there are a suite of conditions proposed which would see the detailed layout come forward and be agreed. So as a worst case scenario, panels were proposed just up here, flex and so those two circles there are worth note, and the other kind of long thin circle here is the planting on Bradford Road. So existing planting is shown as green, and proposed new planting is shown as blue. So if I move on to the proposed layout, those two areas next to Flexham Farm there, panels have been removed off of there, and additional planting has been proposed along that stretch on Bradford Road. So when the application was taken to committee in May, there was an objection from the Conservation Officer on the basis of the impact of the setting of Flexham Farm, which is a Grade 2 listed building. Following the removal of those panels in that area, that objection has now been removed. The Conservation Officer has also noted the mitigation of that additional planting along that boundary of the site, which would enhance the or further mitigate the impact of the development on Flexham Farm and Frith Farm, which is further north here, which is also a listed building, but also in terms of the entrance and exit from the village. The Landscape Officer didn't object to the proposal when it was considered in May, but has been reconsulted for completeness as part of the updated proposals, and she has also confirmed that she's no objections to the proposals and considers the changes to be of benefit to the scheme. So this, excuse me, this is the high-level landscaping plan that shows the landscaping features and planting to be implemented as part of the scheme. So this is part of the plans on the conditions on the plans condition that would see that landscaping mitigation. So moving on to the access points. So when the application was considered in May, there were 3 access points. So access 1, which is the fisheries, which we did visit yesterday on the site visit. There are no proposed changes to that access that would then access into parcel 1, as the highway consultant has named it. Access 2, which is road common, that was proposed to be accessed just for parcel 2. And then there was access 3, which was coming off the A361 down Monkley Lane and then into parcel 3. So there were concerns about the use of Monkley Lane for access of the site. And so the revised plans, this is obviously high level, and I'll show you some more detailed plans in a moment. shows that the construction access along Monkley Lane, access 3, would be removed for construction purposes. So there is a temporary construction track that would come across the field here to avoid any construction traffic along Monkley Lane. So access 2 would be used for both of those purposes. So this is the plan showing access 2. So there was the yellow line over here to the left is serving that development, so that's not changed. And then this new line would be the broad location of the new temporary access track. So we haven't got detailed plans of that, and the Highways Authority has confirmed that we can control that via condition to just see the details of that temporary track, that just to make sure that it's sufficient to carry that construction traffic. There are 2 holding bays proposed. Previously, there was one proposed here, which would have served the area to the left, and an additional holding bay is now proposed to serve the area to the right, just to make sure that there wouldn't be any construction traffic clogging up the A361. So again, these plans have been reviewed by the Highway Authority and confirmed to be acceptable. So the conditions have been amended to reflect these updated plans. So in terms of traffic movements, construction traffic is the first part of that slide. So table 1 is taken from the updated highways statement submitted by the applicant, and that shows their anticipated traffic movements during construction. And then table 2 shows the amended scheme. So basically amalgamates access 2 and 3 together. So those numbers are added together, but they have confirmed that they're not anticipating any additional movements. It's just moving construction traffic from one access point to another. In terms of operational traffic, they are typically very low for solar development once construction is completed. So the applicant anticipates around 4 cars and light goods vehicles per week, and 1 larger vehicle per year to replace equipment and cleaning and those sorts of maintenance issues. At the previous committee, there were some questions about hedgerow. And so I've put some slides in here showing different parts of the site, which will hopefully clarify the hedgerow positions. As I say, green is existing hedgerow and blue is proposed new hedgerow. There's 3.5 kilometres of additional hedgerow planting proposed. So in this part of the site, we can see in here Flexton Farm and Frith Farm. So we've got this additional planting coming further down the Bradford Road, which you'll see in a moment. There we go. So we've got this additional planting here on the boundary. There's also new planting within that field to establish historic field boundaries, which was suggested as part of the application previously through consultation and landscape officer comments and discussions with which the applicant then added. This is the public right of way. You can see additional planting there either side of that, and this is the section to the south, which has also got some planting either side of the public right of way here, and new planting next to the footway. So just as a sort of refresh on the rest of the application, these next few slides aren't showing anything new from last time, but just to remind everyone what we're looking at really. This is the substation and battery storage area, which comes south of Monkley Lane. This is the panel elevation. There were some questions around height at the last committee, so I just put in an extract there because it's considered under the Rochdale principle that the landscape visual impact assessment and all the supporting documents have been assessed on a worst case scenario, but the applicant considers that could come to as low as 2.5, but we should consider it to have potentially having a height of 3 to 4 metres. So the inverters, as previously proposed, These are scattered across the site. There's 28 of them, so they sit as sort of a single feature across the site. They have a width of 12.2 metres. So updated plans have come in showing that bulk reduced to about 6 metres in width. So the height and the depth aren't hugely different, but so they've reduced that bulk down. There's some other elevations for that. The substation compound unchanged from when members considered it in May. And there are the elevations, battery containers, spare parts container. So these are all clustered in this area to the south here. So these are the gates, and this is the fencing. So it's mesh fencing with timber posts. New permissive path to go in on this corner highlighted in pink here to enhance the public right-of-way network and add another benefit to go into that planning balance for consideration when you get to that point. Turning to agricultural land, this has come up again as part of the reconsultation. That there are concerns about loss of agricultural land. So this is set out in the report, and lots of appeal decisions have been considered as part of this, as well as a fairly recent written ministerial statement which came out following the May committee, which reinforces the government's kind of stance on considering the agricultural stability of food production, really. So just as a reminder, the NPPF defines the best and most versatile agricultural land as within grades 1, 2 and 3A. So Natural England has an indicative mapping system which is looked at as a first review, really, and it shows the site as within 3, so it doesn't specify 3A or 3B. So for all solar farm applications, they need to come with a detailed agricultural land quality assessment, which this one has done, and it has followed best practice, and its conclusions are there in that visual that 4% of the site is considered 3A, which is in that category of best and most versatile land, and the rest is outside of that category. So considering the updated written ministerial statement and the proposal itself, that hasn't changed the recommendation that is acceptable in terms of loss of agricultural land and how that sort of would sit in an appeal scenario. Some photos, obviously, most people went yesterday, and those who didn't, I think, have gone other times. Just as a reminder, really, Monkley Lane, Bradford Road, looking south down towards the development, the A361. There's one update since the committee report was published. There have been some changes to the proposed soft landscaping condition, which is condition 31. So that was proposed as a pre-occupation condition. This is now proposed as a pre-commencement condition. So no development would commence until the details, including timescales of the planting plan, would be agreed. So that might include some planting where necessary to come forward sooner to establish as quick as possible where that's needed. So that could also come with consultation with the landscape officer as necessary. But that's the only update. And yeah, the application is still recommended for approval subject to conditions. I am happy to take any questions when the time comes. Thank you.
And thank you for that very, very good presentation, Nikki. And also, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the people who attended yesterday for the site visit, which you organised exceptionally well. I think it was very good. Thank you. Okay, we'll come to questions later. We have public speakers at the moment, and I believe the first one is Sean Freeman, please. And you have 3 minutes, Mr. Freeman.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Sean Freeman, a resident of Monkley Lane in Road, and I wish to object to the revised proposals. Low Carbon was asked by this committee to reduce the impact their proposals will have on our village, but their revised plans, in my view, disrespect and ignore this request. The proximity and scale of the plans remains just the same, with the footprint still at 2.5 times that of the village. The location of the batteries is unsafe, being so close to the houses in Monkley Lane. They expose residents to the dangers of solar farms, which have not been fully understood even nationally. In addition, in this instance, the batteries would be downwind of the prevailing southwesterly wind, and a topset fire would cause unacceptable harm. I truly believe to grant permission in these circumstances would be reckless. The revised proposals appear to still allow emergency vehicles to access the batteries using Monkley Lane, but the lane, under the fire service's own regulations, is too narrow to be safe. To grant permission in these circumstances, I also believe would be reckless. If, however, permission should be granted, permanent access should be provided over the farm, not only just for the construction period. The batteries are to be sited on what I believe to be prime farmland, the batteries that is, up beyond Monkley Lane. This would be sacrificing prime food-producing land, which is directly contrary to that recently issued government guidance referred to by Nikki. The batteries should and could be sited away from houses and not on prime farmland. I realise this would necessitate a longer connection cable to the grid, but this is a small price to pay for a safe solution for residents and to preserve the land for food production. I was very pleased that the applicant appreciated Monkley Lane is not suitable for site traffic and removed it from the revised proposal. However, I have well-founded justifiable concerns the exclusion will not necessarily be observed. I therefore request that the exclusion of the use of Monkley Lane for all traffic be secured and made easily enforceable, something like a 106 agreement. Conditions are not enough. Another landowner in this application who has no regard for rights of others and frequently blocks rights of way, which is a matter of public record, has, out of disappointment in losing Monkley Lane, threatened both me and my neighbour to cut down.
Excuse me,
all the
that's not
hedges
acceptable.
opposite our houses.
That is not acceptable. I'm sorry, that is not a material planning reason. That is not acceptable, please.
What I'm trying to explain, which it is that if hedges are prejudiced, as is the threat, then we would find ourselves having to look upon this development. And so what I would like to see is I would like to see the hedges, both existing and the new ones, clearly stated in the planning applications being protected. That's my point, and that's the justification for the request. Without the justification, you'd be asking why I'm asking it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Freeman. I think your 3 minutes have come to an end.
Summary is I do believe, may I just say, based upon all of the above, I believe a decision to grant permission of a solar farm of this size and in this location would be unprecedented and open the door to similar further decisions, which I urge the Somerset Council not to be responsible for.
Thank you for your contribution. Next we have Mary Comley from the, am I correct, in the Mendip Bridleways and Byways Association. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. As Chair said, I'm here as a committee member of Mendip Bridleways and Byways Association. I'm also a horse rider. Personally, I've retired from a career in highways maintenance largely in Somerset, but also in Wiltshire, so I know the area very well. MBBA as an organisation regularly works in conjunction with Somerset Highways, landowners and contractors. We're very relieved to learn that common sense has prevailed and Monkley Lane Access 3 will not be used during the construction phase of the solar site. However, we're still very concerned that the access road within the site is planned to be only a temporary measure. 40 years is a very long time, to assume that nothing major will go wrong with any of this kit. Equipment just isn't that well behaved. It also remains that Monkley Lane is shown as an emergency access and the vehicles would be too big to use it. The road is unsuitable for site traffic and equally unsuitable to become the nominated routine access route, and very worryingly for any emergencies. It doesn't meet the required standard. It's still the route, it's still a local route which links local bridleways, rights of way, and still used by vulnerable road users who deserve protection. Our second point concerns planning policy guidance and opportunities to maintain and enhance rights of way. These opportunities are very rare. The route FR 13/20 south from Monkley Lane needs maintenance work, partly as a result of the topography of the area and partly due to failing drainage along the site boundary and within the site itself. Inclusion of this drainage improvement work is absolutely essential and needs to be a planning condition. We're here to promote safe access to our rights of way, to be proactive in assessing risk, and to protect all legal users and our access to this pretty historic route.
And thank you very much. And you've done it within inside 3 minutes. Well done. Okay. Now we have one here that I'm going to read out at this particular time. Excuse me. On behalf of the CPRE, and I believe it was from Mr. Fletcher Robinson. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, I'll
I haven't been allowed to speak today, but you kindly agreed to read that. But you're reading it out on behalf of CPRE Somerset.
Okay,
County branch of the National.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I'll read it out for you right now. Okay. The first conservation officer who worked on this project, Jane Bodie, consistently and strongly opposed the huge scale of this project on the grounds of significant harm to the countryside, the countryside setting of road, and to the setting of its conservation area. That was her priority, not the relatively minor question of harm to the setting of a new listed farm buildings. We ask members to give weight to the views of the experienced officer who regrettably has now left the council. We wish her well in the future. When this was deferred on the 7th of May, committee members agreed that the applicant would be given time to propose a scheme pulled much further back from the doorstep of the village and its conservation area. That has not happened. The changes proposed are extremely minor, involving the access, some additional hedging and some panels pulled back from the listed farmhouse. If you look at the applicant's site if you look at the applicant's site selection report, you can see that there was no filter employed which would have prevented the placing of such a huge solar installation on the very doorstep of an historic village with conservation area and over 75 listed buildings. The applicant worked backwards, having predetermined the size of the scheme. All that mattered was finding a site near a connection point with available land of sufficient extent. No work was done to see if a smaller site would have been viable and profitable on this site. We all know that plenty of much smaller solar farms across the UK are viable and profitable. We welcome the news from Road Parish Council that the applicant has now finally met the Parish Council, albeit after submitting its amendments, and has now agreed to look seriously at its proposals to pull back from the village and the extended scheme to the east onto much more suitable land identified in the University of Exeter's research. The planning application should therefore at least be deferred again or refused, so that either a smaller scheme on part of the site furthest from the village, or two, one of the
Time's
more
up, Chair.
suitable and to the east can come forward. There you are. I read it out for you in a way. I understand it was your notes, so I found it a little bit difficult to read, but that's fine. Thank you. Okay, we move on again now. We're into the other ones. We now have Mr. Andy Fussell will be our next speaker, please. And you have 3 minutes, Mr. Fussell.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. I'm Andy Fussell. I came before, so I'm back again. I'm the farmer of the around the fishery where you hopefully visited yesterday, and I'd like to say that I'm constantly encouraged as a farmer to diversify, and this seems to be encouraged by central and local government to enable and create a sustainable future for the farm and the farming industry. We are encouraged to do this. So creating a solar energy is encouraged, it's promoted, supported nationally, locally to protect the environment and society. Its ideology, I believe, not only is upheld, but is vigorously promoted even more now by the newly elected Labour government, as they have removed an onshore wind ban in England on the first working day of Parliament. As was discussed in the previous meeting, Somerset County Council and Road Parish Council have both declared a climate emergency. This solar application, as we just stated before, will create home energy for about 16,000 homes. The biodiversity as a farmer is really important. It's 50% net gain. Dual usage, again, of poor agricultural land through electricity generation with the grazing of sheep. It's got to be a winner, especially for me, with regards to the dual purpose. My land, as you witnessed yesterday when you came, I think, and hopefully you came in to my access and went down to the big ground, which was shown on the map today. You would have seen it's unworkable, it's very wet. It's unworkable when it's dry. It's even more unworkable when it's wet. And with the ever decreasing windows of the weather that we see at the moment and the weather patterns, this results in poor crop establishment, poor herbicide efficacy, poor yields. And even when it's been drained, we still get waterlogging on this area. You will have seen that with your own eyes yesterday, because you'll have seen the maize crop that is attempting to grow in that field with uneven crops. The colour is awful. We have got some lovely green bits in places, but it just displays the lack of ability with the crop coping with that land. So this is a 3B and 4 at least in its category. In response to the requirements requested from the last meeting, the solar panels have been removed from around Flexham Farm, which was the listed property, which came up in the conversation, and from the Conservation Officer. You will also have witnessed on your visit that there are huge existing hedges, which are already tall, thick, and including a very tall planning approved grain shed on the entrance. So time will, just one little bit left, always allow the development to blend into its surroundings whilst providing desperately needed renewable low carbon energy. The application continues to meet Somerset's own policies, provides significant environmental benefit whilst generating renewable energy. There's no technical objections now, and it will be controlled via numerous conditions as a result of the application being deferred at the last meeting. Considerable changes have been actioned, and therefore I see no more legitimate reasons to keep this site from being approved. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Mr. Fussell. Next, we have the next speaker will be. I'm just checking here. Mr. Mike Salmon, the Chair of Road Parish Council, I believe is online.
I am.
Thank you, Mr. Salmon. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, my name is Mike Salmon. I am the Chair of Road Parish Council. The Parish Council strongly supports the provision of sustainable energy, and we would very much like to support this application. However, despite a number of changes, this application continues to have large numbers of fundamental flaws. At its meeting on the 7th of May, the Planning Committee raised 3 critical concerns about the proposed development. Firstly, scale in terms of quantum. The applicant has not addressed this issue at all. The changes made to the proposed development are immaterial in terms of quantum. In fact, the land area of the solar farm appears to be slightly larger in this latest submission to the Somerset Council. Secondly, scale in terms of impact on landscape and heritage assets. The applicant has made a small change which will have some positive impact on the setting of one property. However, this will make no difference whatsoever to the solar farm's impact on the landscape generally. And while hedge planting will no doubt eventually, when mature, help to screen the solar farm during summer, the additional planting is deciduous and will provide little in the way of screening for more than half the year. While the Conservation Officer has accepted that the proposed changes result in a lesser impact to the significance of the surrounding heritage assets, the substance of their previous objections have been almost completely ignored. Thirdly was access. The Planning Committee expressed concern about the use of Monkley Lane to access the development. This concern was not limited to the construction period, although the applicant has chosen to address only this issue. In particular, the applicant has not addressed the issues regarding emergency vehicle access, which are set out in Road Parish Council's original objection. Monkley Lane does not meet the requirements set out in the guidance produced by the National Fire Chiefs Council, principally due to its narrow width, but also in a number of other respects. It is also important to highlight that the landowner concerned does not appear supportive of the proposed access route. In summary, the changes made to the scheme are extremely minor and only partially address the concerns raised by the committee. Further, since the May committee meeting, the government issued a written ministerial statement chiefly highlighting concerns relating to food safety. This is directly relevant to this planning application, which involves the use of significant areas of fertile farmland, including parts categorised as best and most versatile, which is protected under planning law. Road Parish Council is extremely disappointed that the applicant has chosen not to engage with the local community in a bid to arrive at a development of appropriate scale for the location. We believe that an alternative scheme can relatively simply be developed, which achieves the following: a development of significant scale, but appropriately sized for its location and proximity to the village, with minimal negative impacts on the landscape and heritage assets. A development which excludes the use of any high quality agricultural land. A development with a permanent access route supported by local residents.
Wind up, please, Mr. Salmon.
Yeah. We strongly urge the Planning Committee to reject or further defer the application to allow time for the applicant to fully engage with the local community and develop a scheme which can be supported by all. While this may take a little more time, the current scheme with its obvious drawbacks will be in situ for 40 years. A few more months to arrive at a much improved scheme is a small price to pay in that context. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the applicant's agent, I believe, Mr. Matt Lomax. You have 3 minutes and a couple of seconds over, Mr. Lomax.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Lomax and I represent Low Carbon, the applicant. In May, this committee heard our proposal for a new solar farm in Road Parish. Your officers walked through the proposal and explained in their view that the benefits in delivering 6% of Somerset's homes with clean, renewable electricity outweighed the localised impacts. However, members also heard from local residents who felt that those impacts would still be unacceptable to some of the people in Road Parish. As such, members asked Low Carbon to relook at the proposal to see if the impacts could be further reduced. We have taken the opportunity to go away and improve the scheme. Noting the committee's concerns, we have re-engaged with the parish and local residents, and I'm happy to report the following changes. On heritage, we've further removed panels around Flexham Farm, which has resulted in the remaining statutory consultancy objection from the Conservation Officer being removed. On transport, all construction traffic from the southern part of the scheme would now use the private access off the A361. No construction traffic would use Monkley Lane, which is confirmed by condition. On landscape, we have pulled the panels back from the Bradford Road and are now over 20 metres into the field with an additional hedgerow to be planted adjacent to the existing mature hedgerow, and we've also committed to halving the length of the inverter containers. We thank the committee for taking the time to visit the site. What would have been clear is the extensive existing vegetation in and around the site, which helps to contain the development within the landscape. While Low Carbon recognises that the scale of the development still continues to raise concerns, scale has been assessed in the supporting environmental reports, which themselves were reviewed by technical specialists at the council. It is considered that the scale and its associated impacts are acceptable in the context of this development in this location. Members of the committee, proposals like this are vital to decarbonising our society. The council's own predictions show a massive gap between current installed renewable energy capacity and the capacity required to hit net zero. Projects like this are critical to meet its future targets and energy demand. Low Carbon has worked throughout the development process and made numerous changes to ensure the proposal is acceptable in planning terms. So before you today is a project which has no technical objections and planning officer support. We therefore urge you to support your officer's recommendations and approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lomax. Much appreciated your contribution. Okay, I have a statement to read out from Councillor Adam Boyden, who is a one of the divisional members. He unfortunately can't make it to be with us today, so I've agreed to read this out on his behalf. Thank you. Okay. Right, here we go. Statement from Councillor Adam Boyden, Frome North. Apologies for not being able to attend in person today. This is due to various family issues. Last time we looked at this a couple of months ago, I raised a couple of issues and was pleased that the committee agreed to defer the decision to ask the applicants to go away and reconsider two things. Firstly, to require reconsideration of the use of Monkey Lane as an access point for construction, including by heavy vehicles. Those of us who went to the site yesterday saw how unsuitable that route would be. And this is reflected in objections from several residents. The applicants have agreed to change this and now propose an alternative temporary access across the fields around Road Farm, using access 2 off the A361. If construction and heavy goods traffic are now banned from using Monkey Lane, and that can be secured by an enforceable planning condition, I am satisfied that this potential reason for refusal has been addressed. However, the issue of emergency access for the fire service remains to be determined, and although there is a proposed planning condition to agree suitable arrangements before the development is operational, should this be a matter for us to determine here? Question mark. Secondly, the reconsideration of the scale of the development terms of the quantum of the application scheme and its impact on the landscape and heritage assets. In further, that road conservation area and listed buildings. This concern has not been fully addressed, as although the applicants have reduced the scale in a small way and increased landscaping proposals along the A361, the proposals remain larger than the footprint of Road Village. However, as the proposals have moved further away from listed buildings, the council's conservation officer is now satisfied that the impact on heritage assets are not unacceptable. The landscape officer did not object before, but Road Parish Council remain an objector. The case officer's recommendations remains for approval with conditions. Overall, there are substantial benefits in generating a lot of renewable energy for the national grid to reduce our impact on the climate. So the question is, do these benefits outweigh the inevitable harm to the local landscape from the development on such a scale? Question mark. It will depend on whether the landscape is valued and would be harmed, and to what extent can be mitigated. Road Parish Council are asking the committee to defer the decision again to agree permanent and emergency access routes and to further reduce the scale of development to limit the inevitable harm to the landscape close to the village of Road. I do not think that that is an unreasonable request, so I would urge the committee to consider and support that, as I do not think the changes to the proposals have addressed the second reason for the deferral at the previous committee meeting. If the committee has done it, okay, he's got one paragraph left, quick one. If the committee is unable to defer the decision a second time, although the officer recommendation is to approve, you can refuse the application for reasons set out on the Road Parish Council, given these important concerns have not been addressed. And that's, thank you. That's from Councillor Alan Boyd, and he got it nearly right. I was just a bit slow reading it, maybe. Okay, next we will have Councillor Dawn Denton, who is also a member for Frome North.
Thank you. So this summer, we may feel that the sun will never return, but I do agree that solar energy is underutilised. We need to use as many of our natural resources as possible if we are to clean our planet. But this is a dilemma. We want to enhance every opportunity to green our energy, but there are compromises, and are they worth it? The size of the development. On a site visit yesterday, we got to see the development from slightly higher land. One councillor's response was, I didn't realise how big it was. But once we stood at height, we struggled to see the allocated fields with all the trees and hedgerows, which of course will remain, and more will be planted. We travelled around the development on the main and smaller roads in a minibus, so we were higher than if we were in a car, and we could barely see the fields where the panels would be. The site does need to be viable, or there is no point. And this is one of the objections raised by the Parish Council, the scale of the proposed solar farm, which would be the second largest in Somerset and one of the largest in the UK. So each of us have to decide if this is a good or a bad thing. Are we in Somerset trailblazers in the field of green energy and an example of what can be achieved in our quest towards net zero, or are we jumping the gun? It's clear that size does matter. Hedgerows and screening. The Parish Council is concerned that additional planting will be deciduous. And if this committee decides to approve the scheme, could we please ensure that all vegetation is evergreen? Access. I know that the Parish Council's response to using Monkley Lane as an emergency access is highlighted according to the National Fire Chiefs Council, which talks about the width of the road, and also a number of other aspects. But I believe that the fire service is not a statutory consultee. There are a few things to consider. We would like to think that an emergency access will never be used. In the event that it does, this hopefully will be very seldom. Does the narrow access not put the houses and other buildings along this lane at risk too? Surely if they're concerned about emergency access to the solar farm, they should be concerned that the access is not good enough to access their own homes through emergency vehicles, as well as their stables and farm buildings. We also need to consider that battery storage has been known to burn, which is why we need the emergency access. But we also know that this technology is changing daily and actually by the minute, and why the new gravity site is set up in Somerset. From what I can see, this facility is not as close to some of the homes and other farm buildings. But could you let the committee know what would be used to construct the temporary access for the construction? And if this is not in the application, could we put in a condition to ensure that it is good for the environment and also easy to return to normal after the construction phase? But what are the reasons for this access only being temporary, which is something we need to get an answer to as well. Now, I feel strongly about preserving our land for a sustainable and food secure future. but I know that that not all this land is best suited to growing crops. About 90% is 3B or below, and this is considered moderate agricultural land. And I'm no farmer, but can this still be used for something? And I know with the solar panels, of course, we can use it for the grazing. If this land has been used in the past, I also know that due to climate change, it's becoming more difficult to farm.
Time is up, Dawn.
Sorry, just a question. As a divisional member, do I still have to adhere to 3 minutes?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll give you permission to go on a little bit longer, Dawn.
I know that the parish council is concerned about the heritage impacts on the village, but I believe these have been addressed and the conservation officer is happy with the changes. So finally, our decision is simple. Do we vote with our values, what we stand for and what we believe to be important? Do we vote according to the law of the land, the strategies and policies of this council, or do we vote according to the response from the people we represent? If they differ, we do need to apply the tilted balance to our own conscience. Thank you.
And thank you, Dawn. You nearly got there within the 3 minutes, so that's not bad. Okay, I'm now going to open it up to the rest of the committee. Who would like Martin? I did see your hand up.
I was actually putting my hand up to ask the same question as Dawn, as to whether the divisional council or council on this committee is restricted to 3 minutes, but I have my answer. Okay. But I will speak now that I've got my hand up, if that's right. I mean, there is a quandary here. You know, I instinctively support the idea of a solar farm. I think it's very important. We're finding we have new buildings going up which don't have enough electricity supplied by the grid to sustain them. You know, if people want to have, we want to have air source heating pumps, we're going to have more electricity. So I like that. I think that's important, but equally, we don't want to lose farming land. I think I might be persuaded that this isn't the best, most suitable farming land for this particular project would probably be viable in that respect. But there are too many questions. And I think we as a committee have got to get this absolutely right, because we are setting a very important precedent here, because I suspect we're going to be facing quite a lot of planning applications, equally from farmers who want to use their land for solar. And therefore, I'm inclined to feel that we should look again at the other issues that have come up, particularly from the parish council. In principle, I think I'd be agreeable to it, but I do think it's too big. I do think there are issues, and I wasn't able to go on the site visit, but I've travelled that road many times, and pulling out from the Bradford Road onto the A361, pretty hectic, pretty dangerous at the best of times. The idea of having, I'm getting a shake of the head over there. You disagree with me, but no. Okay, but that the increase in traffic is an issue. But if highways have approved it, I can't disagree with that. Just too many questions, and I think Councillor Boyden mentioned the possibility of deferral to iron out some of these issues. This is a big project, and we shouldn't be frightened to defer it once more if necessary.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Edric, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. Nikki, could you put the site plan up again, showing where all the panels are? Because I like to suggest we remove some in scale back on the stuff nearest road, to have any chance of me wanting to approve this, please. That's the one. Thank you kindly. I'm concerned I'd like to see 2 parts scale back. I don't know what my fellows think, but I'm sure we'll hear from them in due course. I'd like to see it scaled back west of the fishery. Those panels there taken out, to take them further away from Road Village. So the corner above the triangle, above the empty triangle. I won't do a Helen Kane approach to the screen. I know Helen was fond of that when she's here, but I'd like to see the banks of panels to the west of the fishery, north of the triangle, removed, and I'd like to see it scaled back away from the property in Monkley Lane, because I'm well aware that looking at those properties yesterday, some of them have got balconies, they're overlooking the site, and also that's quite a large scale development very near them. So I'll see what everybody else says, but my first thoughts are scale it back slightly. I noticed on the submission that it's gone from 75 to 79 hectares. So I don't know what I'm proposing to remove or scale back to the original 75 hectares. So I'd welcome a comment on that. And also, I made some notes here about the fire service criteria. I don't think that lane was that narrow. It's probably not helped by the fact that residents have stuck stones all over the verge in relation to access of traffic. And as I think Dawn highlighted, if it's unsafe for an emergency vehicle to get to the site, then presumably it's not very good to get an emergency vehicle down to your own property and stables. But I would like to see it scale back in those instances. So I'd value some comments from officers, please.
Okay, Nick, would you like to come back on Edric's comments, or Anna, if you've got anything?
In terms of the views from the balconies, residents don't have a right to a view, so that is something to obviously to bear in mind. We'll ask our highways expert to come in on the fire safety aspect in a moment. Nikki.
Yeah, thank you. Just trying to find the page in the report. So page 54 in the report bundle talks about the site size. The site hasn't increased in size. There's a different number that's referred to in the updated access strategy, but the site hasn't increased in size. The number of panels has been reduced since the last time this was considered at committee in May. So hopefully that's clarified that point. It has reduced rather than increased. The landscape condition can consider the species. So we'd look to incorporate that as part of that condition. Obviously, there's a lot of landscaping there at the moment, and it is hedgerow, which does offer some value in terms of year-round screening. But I take your point, and that can be something that can be incorporated into that condition. The condition on the temporary access that requires the detailed plans and detailed information. We can look to amend that to include the materials to make sure that that's an environmentally responsible material. That's something that we could do post committee. I do have some concerns in terms of potential from the applicant to submit an appeal under non-determination, because this application has been with the council already, and I am mindful of the landscape in terms of appeal decisions, which are positive. So I would just ask members to just be mindful of that. Also, this application isn't considered in the tilted balance because it's not housing, so it's considered in the flat balance. So members are asked to consider green energy for 16,000 houses against the harms of heritage and landscape, but also noting that we don't have objections from the conservation officer or the landscape officer, and to perhaps think about how the council would look to defend those kinds of reasons at appeal if it came to that. So I'll just leave that with you, if I may. Hopefully that's answered all your questions, and perhaps I'll defer to Emma, with your permission, Chair, just to talk about the highways parts.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Emma, please.
Good afternoon all. To be 100% honest with you, Councillor Denton and Councillor Hobbs both covered the nub of my comments regarding the emergency access. If a new development and a new road were to be created, the requirement would be a minimum width of 3.7 metres between curbs to safely get a fire engine to a site, with a gateway width of 3.1 metres. A fire engine itself is 2.46 metres wide. But I think the point of existing buildings, be that stables, be that dwellings, are on Monkley Lane. I believe that the fire service were consulted, both on the previous submission and on the resubmitted plans, and haven't objected on either. I wouldn't consider there to be a problem with a fire safety issue. If there is, then there is a bigger problem. And obviously the fire service don't either. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Next, we'll move on to Rob. I think you were the first one I had down.
Thank you, Chair. We will. As everyone knows, I'm fairly new to this planning meeting, so I'm coming late on this application. But I did go around the site visit yesterday, taking everything on board. I know quite a bit about solar farms because I was a member of Evercreech Parish Council who strongly objected to the solar farm outside Evercreech. So I know that our objections were met a very high bar that needed to climb over to object, which it didn't meet. And going through the site meeting yesterday, I couldn't see any reason that an objection would get over that bar. So basically, I shall be supporting it. But I just, a couple of things I've made a mention of, which has already been mentioned by public speakers. The enhanced landscaping, would it be possible to have that as a condition to be put up, to be planted first, especially the bit along Bradford Road, before commencement of the building work starts?
Can we get Nick to answer that question now, or have you got a couple more questions?
Well, just one more question. It goes on to one of my other favourite topics, which is public rights of way. And as was mentioned before, the footpath at the end of Monkley Lane, which I believe is 1320, a footpath stroke horsey path, completely overgrown, pretty well impossible. Would that be surely it's an ideal time to put that on as a condition to reinstate that as a usable path. And also I did note that the footpath style by the farm gate going onto the public footpath there is in need of replacement. Would that be possible to add on as a condition?
Okay, Nick, do you think you can answer those two questions or three questions?
I'll give it a try. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
The landscaping condition, as put up on the update, includes some amended wording on the timescales. So that has been discussed. It's a pre-commencement condition, so we need to agree that as a local planning authority with the applicant before we put that on. So I have spoken to the applicant and agreed that condition. So that includes timescales of works. So that the applicant has confirmed that some could come forward sooner to get that landscape mitigation in place. He specifically mentioned Bradford Road. There is a 16-metre gap, a buffer between the edge of the site to the development. So there is plenty of room in there to put that landscaping in. So that is something that we could agree in that part of the site. There were other parts of the site that might have more room and more need to have that landscaping to go in. Other parts, because it's the Rochdale principle, other parts of the site might not actually have panels coming forward. So they might not need their landscape mitigation coming in so soon. So that's certainly where that condition's looking to control those timescales to get that landscape mitigation in at the right time early, as needed. So hopefully that condition will address that question. In terms of upgrading to the off-site features like the public rights of way, that's outside the site, and there are conditions tests that are set out by national government that we need to meet. So it needs to be any conditions that we add on to planning permissions need to be related to the development and reasonable. So we wouldn't be able to add those on because it wouldn't meet those national tests, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Nick. Rob, has that answered your questions? Or as best that can be answered? I think some of us are never happy with our answers, to be quite truthful with you, but the rules are the rules. Okay, thanks, Rob. Phil, your turn.
Thank you, Chair. Don't really want to repeat what everybody else has said, but to me, does the benefits of this application outweigh the harm? And to me, it does, because clean green energy for 16,000 homes against 90% of this land, or 90+% of this land being poor quality land. And poor quality land results in failing crops. And failing crops use an awful lot of CO2 because you have to plough, plant, do all the work, and you get nothing back for it. So to me, there's a big, big benefit here. Regards road safety, construction traffic is going to be less than the farming activity using that road now. And if you've driven a tractor and trailer in and out of some of those gateways, you'll know what I mean. It's really, really serious. Regards to the fire, I had an application here probably 2 or 3 years ago where I had a road that was less than 2.7 metres wide to build 50 houses, although there was already 50 houses on the site. There's going to be an additional 50, and that was allowed. And that was only 2.7, because the argument was, if it's all right for the 50 already there, it'd be all right for another 50. So I think if it's all right for the people that are there now, it'd be all right for the battery station. The last question is, I think, is for the legal advisor. If we did defer this, are we at risk of going to appeal?
Thank you. I think, Nick, that technical question at the end, could you answer that, please? Oh, Leslie, you would probably be good at that.
I think in answer to Councillor Van's question, Nikki has already alluded in her address to the fact that the applicant would be minded to issue in the event of another deferral. So I think the risk is there.
That would be for non-determination, I think, wasn't it?
That would be correct, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Phil, I hope that answers your question. Who's next, please? Barry, I can just about see your hand there. It's the sun's sunny out there today, coming through the windows.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask the planning officer a question about these battery fires that we've been hearing a little bit about. There is a battery container management system in place. If a battery catches fire, what does this management system do to prevent it spreading and to prevent the fumes going over people's houses?
Yeah, with your permission, Chair,
Sorry, I didn't realise you'd come to the end. Yes, me. Return to answer again.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't come to the end yet.
Okay, go one at a time.
Thank you. So when the application was first submitted, we consulted with the Fire Authority, and there was a draft emergency protocols statement management plan that was consulted on, which is standard practice for battery facilities. So the Fire Authority has confirmed that they're happy in principle at this very high level document, but we would need to put a condition on that. So when the firm details of exactly what's proposed, exactly which technology would be used, then a detailed management plan would come in. Then we would consult with them again. And highways, it does say in the NPPF that we would consult with them, and we have consulted with them twice we've had consultation comments, and that would then come as part of the condition, so that all that detailed management in case of an emergency would come through. I appreciate that that is a public concern for people, and I think that's probably why the NPPF was changed to put those extra consultation requirements in. To my mind, we've met all the obligations in terms of the NPPF, and there is no reason why that wouldn't be deemed as acceptable. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Barry, I think you're coming back with another question, I believe.
Yes, please. Well, it's not so much a question, Chair, as a, well, yes, there is a question, but perhaps Nikki could answer that one at the end. This application is divided into 4 parcels, or 4 basic parcels of solar panels. And we talked yesterday that the applicant has made up the maximum allowable before it goes on to a different level of consideration. Is it possible that any one of these parcels can be sold off and then developed into a further less than 50 megawatt installation? Or are they conditioned that they must all stay together?
I remember this coming up yesterday, actually, in the general conversation. Nick, would you like to give an answer, or as best you can, to that one?
Yeah, thank you. This application is considered by the local planning authority because it's less than 50 megawatts of electricity that's generated. So anything above that would be considered a nationally significant infrastructure project, which would then be considered by the planning inspectorate and government. So that's why there's a condition on there to limit the electricity generation, just to make it very, very clear that limit is in place and it's within the scope of the local planning authority to determine that application. In the event that another proposal came forward, that would be subject to further planning application. So there aren't conditions to link them all together, but there is always a requirement to consider the cumulative impact of solar development. So permissions, regardless of whether they've been built out or not, would be a key material planning consideration in the assessment of any new application. And then that would be considered all in the realm, and all those other sort of landscape, heritage, significant planning matters would be informed by all the other nearby development, as it has done for other solar development in the sort of slightly wider area. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick, you wish to come up one more time, Barry, do you?
Yeah, it's not a question, it's really a statement. We're encouraging farmers to devolve into other things to make themselves viable. Somerset have declared a climate emergency. And I think we should recognise that in the country we have an energy emergency. There is less energy being produced than we shall need in 10 years' time. And I think whether you like them or not, this scheme ought to be approved. When you drive round solar panels or solar farms, if you're in a car or walking, you don't see them. I've driven along the A303 for about 3 years before I realised there was a solar farm on the right-hand side going to the Oval. Never ever saw it. It didn't interfere with anybody. It didn't make any noise. It doesn't do anything except generate electricity, which is for the good of all of us. And I think this scheme is to be recommended. And I would far prefer to see the applicant's solar farm here than I would see possibly the equivalent in wind turbines would be 8 wind turbines, each as tall as the top of Wells Cathedral. I think I know which I'd rather see. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your comments, Barry. And I will also come back in and I will say that I agree with you on the one. I know exactly the solar farm you were referring to on the on the Oval Way. So yeah, I understand your opinion. Do we have any more? Dawn, you wish to come back?
It's just a question about the battery storage facility. Is there a reason why it's specifically there? Or could it be moved further away from the houses, as Mr. Hughes made reference to with the extending the cables? Is there a reason why it's there specifically?
My understanding is it's there because that's a more sensitive siting in terms of landscape impact. It's quite a contained part of the site. When I've been with the landscape consultant and the landscape officer, their professional view is that that part of the site is the sort of least concerning part of the site. So that is my understanding of why it's there, and my view is that is the right place for it, for those reasons. That area is well contained, and when we went walking down there yesterday, it was very difficult to see that part of the site. So my recommendation would be to leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. That question was answered there, I think, Dawn. Okay. Edric, you wish to come back?
Yeah, I'd still like to come back with my suggestion. We scale back slightly. Maybe I could tell my request in relation to Monkley Lane, going on what Anna said about, I know we haven't got a right to review and I shouldn't have made that comment, but I would still like to see it scaled back slightly further away from Road Village itself I appreciate the heritage officer or conservation officer is happy it doesn't affect the heritage setting of an ancient village, but I would still like to see it scaled back slightly. I don't know if anybody would like to support me in those comments, but that's my request. I'd like to amend the plans to scale them back slightly, as I suggested, to move it further to the east, slightly further away from Road Village, please.
I'll get legal advice on that one, Leslie. I'm afraid I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you think that's something we should take? Where Edric wants us to suggest that.
Shall I do a Helen Kay a moment and approach the board and show you what I mean? In Helen Kay mode, I'm approaching the screen. Would it be possible, please? Could we at least move, say, that bit to take it further away from Road Village? Would that be possible? I don't know if the applicant would be amenable to that. Have anybody else got any suggestions? That's what I'm suggesting. Thank you.
Nick, would you like to come back in on that, please?
Yes, thank you. Although I appreciate the comments, I do note that when the application was deferred last time, it was talked that scale and impact on Road Village was one of the considerations. So that has been discussed with the applicant. To my mind, this is the final scheme coming forward that I think we would struggle at appeal to defend. Would be my recommendation. As I say, that was put to the applicant, and these are the changes that we've had. So we have specifically, as a council, asked them that question, and this is the revision that we've had, would be my view.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Does anybody else wish to speak?
Can Benty come in first?
Benty's been sat there patiently, have you, Benty? You come on in.
To say,
playing Space Invaders.
I would say that deferring this application to today or any other day has, in my point of view, been a precious waste of time. I'm very sorry. The things that has been rocked in this boat is precious little, and it is there is nothing there, not even. You can make it smaller. There is nothing here that I can say is a gain for anybody but the solar panel farms. And as I do not agree with solar panels farm, there's nothing that has changed my appointment from last time. I'm never going to ask for a deferral of things like this here ever again, because it doesn't work.
Thank you very much for your contribution there, Benty. Much appreciated. Martin, I believe you wish to.
Only that Mr. Chairman, with due respect, I'm picking up sort of from the room that there seems to be a movement towards, and from the officers, towards approving this, but maybe we need delegated or to delegate authority to the officers to amend some of the issues that we've addressed. However, I can't remember exactly what they all are, but I don't know if that would be a way forward with this rather than deferring it, as I suggested earlier.
I'm more inclined to go with your option there, rather than deferring. I would personally be against deferring. Leslie, would you have any comments on this?
Chair, the issue about deferral is that there is a strong risk of appeal for non-determination. That's been discussed this afternoon, and I think the officers would certainly confirm that position again.
Thank you, Leslie. Nick, would you agree? And would you be able to take on board what Martin has said? Or would that be very difficult?
I request some clarification on what sort of changes you're looking to delegate to officers. If you're looking to make changes to conditions, as we've discussed, I think that'll be fine. If you're looking to make significant changes to the scope of the proposal and the scale of development, I think we would struggle with that, and we would have to get agreement from the applicant that the scale of the proposal would be reduced, which, as I say, we have already discussed, and there would be need to be an opportunity for the local community to comment and the consultees to comment. So I've just sort of raised those as potential issues, but perhaps if you wanted to clarify which kind of changes, and we can have a look and see if they're in scope.
Thank you, Nick. Martin, back to you.
As I said, I mean, I wasn't noting down the changes. I just picked them up around the room. Maybe nobody has any strong. I mean, Edric's point seems to have been clarified, and maybe we can't reduce the size of it, which I would have agreed with. Others may have considerations they would like to take into mind, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there isn't any. There aren't any conditions people would wish to see you delegated. To which they'd like you to take delegated responsibility.
Okay, thank you, Martin. I understand your position and somewhat agree. Edric, I did see your hand was up again.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're going around in circles a bit now, so I'm going to propose, having listened to all the arguments, having had my recommendation or my suggestion discounted, I understand why. I'm going to ask now for a seconder that we go with officer recommendation to approve this scheme, please.
Oh, thank you, Edric. That's appreciated. Okay, who's going to second? Actually, I will second it to make a change. So there we go. So I'm seconding that we go with officer approval, the officer recommendation for approval. Thank you. Okay, so we need to go to the vote. So, all those in favour of going with officer recommendation for approval? Right, 6. All those against? 1 and 1 abstention. Thank you. So that one is carried. There will be a solar farm at Road. Thank you. Right, members, do you wish to have a comfort break now, or do you wish to do another application first? We've been sat for an hour and a half, so we've got to, I think we could do another one, don't you? Quickly. Okay, so we will do the next one, okay, which is agenda item 6, which is one of Carlton's, and it's 31 Stockhill Road, Chilcumpton, which is near Radstock, as we know. So over to you, Carlton. And I hope you have a bit more success with your IT than you've had previously.
Afternoon, everyone. This application is at 31 Stockhill Road in Chilcumpton. The application is for planning permission for the erection of 1 detached dwelling house and the relocation of a scheme for parking that originally was approved at the site to the front of the host property. I'm going to make a little update on the application. You will see from our planning report that I'm recommending refusal, and initially there was two grounds for refusal. First being cramped foreland development in terms of the layout of the scheme, having regard to the permission we've already granted there for two further dwellings. And the second reason related to overlooking from a dormer window at first floor level in the roof space, which would directly overlook one of the properties that had already gained planning permission. The applicant has since come back to me with revised drawings, and he has omitted the dormer window in that elevation, which results in the reason for refusal now being addressed. And so we're going down to the one reason for refusal now is the cramped form of development in terms of its layout. And we've reassessed this against the planning balance with regard to sustainable development, and we don't have a 5-year housing supply. And we consider again that in this case, the layout of the scheme, the harm would outweigh the benefits. I can. Right. Let's go through the. Right, that's the location plan. Number 31 is the house in the middle of the red line there. So the red line encompasses around the front of the property to relocate the parking for number 31 and around the back where the position of the house is. The other blue land you'll see later on is where we've already given permission for two further dwelling houses. Right. So this is the layout of the site at the moment, with the main number 30 on the left-hand side there. And if you see the bright green bit on the right-hand side, that's where there was going to be a double garage to serve number 31. So this is the location where, instead of building that double garage, is to site a dwelling house. So you'll see the two houses that have been given planning permission to the right-hand side there, and with their generous gardens, etc. This is a sort of contextual cross-section of the site at the moment, looking from both sides. You can see the existing number 31 in more detail there, and then an outline of the two houses that were given planning permission, which the permission remains extant for the time being. So this is the revised layout of the scheme. So you'll see where the double garage was. The applicant seeks to put in quite a large detached house there, with a very small garden at the rear, large parking area out the front, and then parking at the front of number 31 on the road there to compensate for the loss of parking that where the garage was going to be, which is now going to be the house. So this is a contextual plan like before, but this time with the house in place. These are the proposed floor plans, etc. So if you look at the right-hand plan and the roof plan there, the top projecting rear extension there, that's got roof lights in it, which replaced the large dormer that was originally. The roof lights would be set at over 1.7 meters above finished floor level, so you won't be able to look out of them and compromise the neighbouring amenity. So the design of the house itself. The council doesn't object to the design of the house itself, merely the cramped form of development. So that's the number 31, the existing property, and you'll see an extended photo looking back at the site where there'll be two houses, and this would be the proposed site just to the rear of number 31. I thought I'd just put this up. This was the scheme as previously approved. So you'll see the siting of the two houses at the back there. and the garage. And I've given you an indication of the scale and appearance of the garage that was initially to be built. So there is a little bit of loft space in the top. So it's quite a large structure. It served several purposes, not only providing parking for number 31 that would be lost to the scheme, but it also provided a nice buffer between the two houses approved and number 31, protecting the amenity of their garden, etc. Whilst the proposal doesn't adversely impact on 31's amenity, it was just a well thought out scheme, we thought, and that's why we gave a planning approval. So essentially we're considering now that shoehorning an additional dwelling into that space, which also compromises a lot of the garden of number 31, reducing the size of the garden of 31, is just too much of a cramped form of development in terms of its layout. And we are recommending refusal on that one single grounds alone. Thank you.
And thank you, Carlton. Very good. Okay, I believe we've got our only public speaker on this one is Lee. Wherever you are, there you go. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, councillors. I'm Lee Wright of Wright Consult, agent for this planning application. The application before you is for a very modest, highly energy efficient 3-bedroom family dwelling. This size and type of dwelling is in high demand across the district, and our very own local plan states under paragraph 6.127 that 3-bedroom dwellings need to make up 50% of all new homes across the district, and this being by far the largest requirement of houses across all bedroom numbers. The officer report before you objects only on 2 grounds, one of which, the rear side facing dormer, has been addressed with amended plans, as you've heard from the officer presenting this afternoon. The other objection, and in fact the only objection now remaining, relates to the rear garden of the proposed dwelling being small and out of keeping with the much larger gardens in the vicinity. Notably, these large gardens in the vicinity are attached to equally large dwellings and not attached to modest dwellings such as that proposed before you. Very simply, the dwelling proposed is modest in size and its garden equally modest and reflective of the garden sizes of many of the more recent dwellings constructed across the district, including those in Chilcompton. I therefore respectfully put to councillors, contrary to the one objection to this application, that this proposal presents an effective
You need to make
and
sure that you
efficient.
put up the toilet seat because your wee is going all over the back. I'm sorry. I'm just.
That's a new one.
Do you have any ideas on that one, Helen? Okay, Lee, we'll give you a bit of extra time.
I'll just redo that paragraph. I think you've heard this before. I therefore respectfully put to councillors, contrary to the one objection to this application, this proposal presents an effective and efficient use of land, and being effective and efficient with the use of land is important if we want affordable yet highly energy efficient, modest family homes. Interestingly, the officer report does not raise any objection or issue with residential amenity as conveyed towards the bottom of page 192 of the report before you. To conclude, there are no objections to the application from statutory consultees. There is only one objection from a neighbour, and this has been addressed in the report before you. And the parish council in their recommendation not only raised no objection, but importantly, they recommended approval. And I have a copy of that recommendation here, if you need to see it, because that wasn't covered in the report. It does actually say recommend approval. As decision makers, I therefore respectfully ask for your considered support this afternoon and your approval of this application. Councillors, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lee. That's brilliant. Right, there's nobody else. I believe that this is Edric and Tony's division. Tone's not here, so Edric.
Yeah, I am. Thank you for that, Lee, with the interlude in the middle, or interlude in the middle. I'd like Coron to address the question. You said something along the lines of lack of parking, and they were expecting parking to be on the road. Is that correct in relation to something to do with the plan? Let me find out who this is, please. If I'll repeat it. Yeah, Karen, in your report, you said about loss of parking, and parking was being replaced by roadside parking, which is what I have a concern about. Could you address that one, please? Just confirm that.
Yes, Cedric. So originally, the scheme came.
Hold on a second. Can we ask these people to stop?
Hello, there's people viewing online. Could you make sure your speakers are off? It might be Kirsty, I'm not sure. Thank you, Kirsty.
Right. So when we agreed the two houses at the back, there was parking out the back for number 31. So it got rejigged. So they were going to build a garage and provide parking at the back, similar to the situation they had at the time. And because they want to now use that area to site the dwelling, they've moved the parking provision for 31 to the front of the property and created spaces there. And we're not considering that to be a harmful aspect of the scheme, because essentially they could create that parking there without the need for planning permission anyway at number 31. So for us, it's outside of our control. But in terms of all the developments, all four houses that would be along that drive, all four of them, sufficient parking is provided for all four houses, should you approve this current one.
Okay, thanks. That's my only question at the moment. I'll wait to see what other people say, maybe come back in later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Edric. And we will see. We better go around the table now and see who has any questions. Phil.
Just a very short question or observation. Carlton said that the garage, as it shows, was a barrier between the old houses and the new houses. I don't see the relevance, because the two new houses haven't got a barrier between those two. Yeah, why have we got a barrier between the old house and the two new ones when the two new ones are next to each other?
I think
it's just an observation.
I understand where you're coming from for observation, but if Carlton would like to give you the official reply.
Well, it was just considered good design in terms of ensuring number 31 had the level of amenity they currently enjoyed continued, because there was nothing behind the house to start with.
Thank you, Carlton. That makes sense to me. You okay with that, Phil? Okay, right. As much as ever. Okay, who else would like to have an observation or a question? I'm looking around here. I'm not seeing much going on. Not even Barry? No? Rob, no? Edric, back to you then, because you said you'd like to come back in again.
Yeah, well, I'm guessing we're struggling to find a reason to actually agree with Carlton on this, because nobody's actually saying anything. So, regrettably for Carlton, I'm going to recommend that we go against officer recommendation. I think we should approve this. I don't see a problem with it, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Dawn, you're going to second, Edric. Fine. Okay, we'll move to a vote. Edric, what is the reason?
I don't think it is particularly overcrowded, and I don't think the amenity of the neighbouring house is being affected.
Okay, so that's the reason why. Did you manage to catch that, Leslie?
I am catching it.
You catching it? Well done. Okay, we'll go to the vote. Who is in favour of Edric's proposal to go against the officer recommendation? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against Edric's recommendation? 1, 2, 3, 4.
And you then.
Oh dear. Well, I can't really change my opinion, can I? So I'm going to have to go with Carlton as the officer and go with the officer for approval. Thank you. Refusal, sorry, yeah. Okay, so unfortunately that one's refused.
Don't we go back to the substantive motion, which is yours? We now need to vote again for the
Okay,
Sorry,
right,
to clarify, obviously Carlton did mention that in the updating that it's just the one refusal reason now. The amenity one is not one that officers had on the table. So it's just the crampness of the scheme, yeah.
okay, I think we all understood that, so we've got to go back to it. So it's for, I've got to get the yeah, but do we go for refusal along with officer recommendation?
We'll need a proposer and seconder for the new.
Do we have a seconder? Okay, I think Barry had his hand up first, just about. Okay, all those in favour of going with the officer recommendation on this one? All those against going with the officer recommendation? Okay, no abstentions, obviously. Okay, it's down to me, and I'm going to have to go with the officer recommendation as I already have voted that way. So I'm voting for refusal. Okay, so yes, you have that one. I'm sorry about that. You haven't got your house. I think we'll take a 10-minute break and be back here at 24 or less than 10 minutes and be back here at 25 past. Okay? Thank you. Oh, I hate them.
What, having to make a decision?
Hello, it's still nice and short.
Okay, can everyone sort of take their seats? I believe that we have lost Dawn. Councillor Denton had to leave. So that puts us down to 7 now, which is okay for me because it means I won't have to make any awkward decisions. Okay, so we're going to move on to agenda item 7, which Lindsay is doing. But you're there, yeah?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. So if you would like to carry on with this one.
Getting that? Can you hear me okay? But no?
I can hear you. Yeah, don't worry.
Just had to move it further away. So we're now on agenda item 7, as you say, Ashmount Old Froome Road in East Torrington. The application relates to land to the southwest of Ashmount, the host dwelling, access to off of Old Froome Road, a classified road, and outside defined development limits. The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of a dwelling described as an accessible and adaptable whole life dwelling. This is an aerial photograph of the site. Ashmount is to the north and the proposed dwelling would be to the south. Here's the submitted location plan. Ashmount again to the north, proposed dwelling labelled there to the south. And I've just overlaid the location plan onto that aerial photograph just to give you the context of the site. This is the submitted site plan. The elevations of the proposed dwelling. The proposed floor plan and roof plan. The detached garage elevations. And the floor plan for the garage. And here's a selection of site photographs. So this is at the access looking northish, southish, towards Wells. That would be, that way is it towards the centre of the village. That's towards Wells. And then from the access looking into the site. Up to the host dwelling. Okay, so it's recommended for refusal for 2 reasons, but there's some updating to do on this. The refusal reason 1 refers to a priority habitat. Just for completeness, I've included refusal reason 2 here as well. But there is an issue with the priority habitat mapping. So this is our mapping for the priority habitat. That's the hatched area. And you'll note that it excludes the track, but it is the entire red and blue lines of the application site. However, this wasn't raised as a priority habitat, either in the preliminary ecological appraisal or by our consultees at Somerset Ecology Services. So long story short, triple checking that what was going on, they've now looked at their mapping. They use a different system, which is called Magic Maps. And only the track, which I've highlighted in red, is shown on their mapping as a priority habitat, which is erroneous. That doesn't make sense in terms of mapping. So we can't say at this point that it is a priority habitat because we've got this conflict. As I say, it seems that the Magic Map is the erroneous one rather than ours. the site does remain an important habitat because of the obvious biodiversity on the site and the harm by the removal of the 12 trees identified in the arboricultural impact assessment. And the site is mapped within the national forest inventory, which have mapped the entire country for forests and woodlands, including Somerset, and this is where our mapping has come from. And reference should therefore be made to the Somerset Tree Strategy, which identifies the benefits of trees to combating climate change and biodiversity loss. And trees are also recognised within the National Planning Policy Framework for their associated benefits under paragraph 180. So the application is recommended for refusal. In broad terms, unjustified development outside development limits, which would result in unsustainable development, harm to biodiversity, encroachment into the countryside, and inappropriate design of the dwelling.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay, your presentation. So we'll move on to the speakers now, and I think the first one is Nick Pyatt. You're here? Yeah, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm Nick Pyatt. I'm a neighbour of the site Mr. and Mrs. Baker. I live opposite. I have no vested interest in the outcome of this, simply come here to support the proposal. To give you some context of where I'm coming from with my observations, I've spent 30 years as a forester, 10 years on climate change and wider sustainability development. I think the first thing to say is that I would invite the committee to just check that the report is the latest report, because the current plan, as I understand it, only plans to remove 2 trees, and they are not the hardwood trees, which are the objective of this forest garden. The 2 trees to be taken down are alien natives that were planted to get a quick early cover, and with the design to be taken out to leave the native trees to remain. So for that reason alone, I would invite just to check that you're being given the information that is the current information. I think on a other general point, I understand there's been some questioning about whether the development is in character with the village. The current development is very modern, obviously. It's going to be newly built. However, the character of East Harrington is one in which one side of the road, my side of the road, is old buildings. The other side of the road is very modern buildings. It's a line of bungalows and larger houses built in, I would guess, in the 60s or 70s. And so in terms of the character of the village, adding a modern building on that side of the road is within the character of the building. Also, in terms of the whole life living, having seen people's lives completely freed by the sort of design that is intended for this building, taking pressure off the NHS, taking pressure off the social support services, I would really encourage us to be supporting this sort of design, given that there is not the impact on trees. In fact, almost zero impact on the trees, the native trees that are the important issue on this site, and that it is in character with the building, with the village. So thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. You were inside your 3 minutes. Thank you. Very good. And I am now going to read out a statement from the parish clerk of St Cuthbert's Out. This has just come to me, so I haven't had a chance to read it properly first. So I will I'll read it from here, and we will see how we're doing. I've lost my glasses. Nothing unusual. Under the under the papers. I was trying to be tidy. Right, here we go. Okay, dear Miss Bradshaw, Ashmount, Old Froome Road, East Torrington Wells. St Cuthbert's Out Parish Council request this letter is submitted in advance to the Planning Committee East meeting on Thursday, the 11th of July. Unfortunately, there are no parish councillors available to attend the previous minutes did not in 2020 require full justification for an approval recommendation. Therefore, the council would like to elaborate on why this application is supported. The justifications for the council's recommendation of approval were as follows. Layout and density of buildings. It was agreed that the house was well designed for the use of a family member with disabilities. Design and appearance impact on public visual amenity. The house would not be seen from the road and fitted into the landscape very well due to the design, as it was self-built for their future needs. Overlooking loss of privacy or overbearing nature of proposal. There was no risk to neighbours of loss of privacy, and the design incorporates established trees to soften and disguise the dwelling and garage. Phosphate mitigation. Recently submitted reports since the council meeting in 2020 confirmed that the phosphate concerns have been successfully mitigated. That's from Natural England, is what she's saying there. Natural England accepts the nutrient budget for the scheme and the proposed approach to delivering phosphorus mitigation. On this basis, and Natural England agrees with the submitted SHRA, Somerset Ecology Services state that the council has ascertained beyond reasonable scientific doubt that the development will not adversely affect the integrity of the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar site, either alone or in contribution with other plans or projects. St Cuthbert's Out Parish Council felt that the proposed house met all requirements for disabled living and was achieving all the guidelines set out by the government for accessibility and adaptable whole life dwelling. The Parish Council strongly recommend approval of this application, and that was sincerely from Lisa Poole, who is the parish clerk at St Cuthbert's Out. Thank you. So to that one, and now I believe we can move on to Anne Baker, who is the applicant. And you have 3 minutes, Anne.
Good afternoon. My name's Anne Baker. My husband David and I are seeking planning permission for a new house in the garden of our home in East Torrington, prompted by our experience of caring for my mother, who sadly had motor neurone disease. Her home in Wales quickly became unsuitable for her needs, and we were unable to find an alternative property. She spent her last 6 months in a nursing home. As a former ward sister in West Mendip Hospital, I've seen too often that people have been unable to return home to familiar surroundings due to changed health and care needs. So thinking of our own future, the design brief for the new house was to provide an energy efficient, wheelchair accessible, whole life dwelling, which would exceed the normal standards for building regs, for example, by providing disabled access throughout the ground floor, on the approach to the property and in the garden, and providing the potential for a ground floor bedroom and bathroom. In terms of services and facilities, the Horringtons are a thriving rural community which we've been part of for 16 years. The village school, Treehouse Day Nursery and Wells Golf Club are all less than a mile away, while Horrington Cricket Club adjoins our garden. Wells is about 1.5 miles away, so its services are easily accessible to us. Our Ukrainian family walked to Horrington School every day and often walked into Wells and back from our house or to the bus stop adjacent to the school. We've seen a new house built recently just outside our village and permission granted for new homes in West Horrington, all of which rely on the same services we currently and will need in the future. The impact on the character of the area is perhaps subjective, but we hope you'll take into account that we have the support of the Parish Council and there are no objectors. Indeed, a few residents of the village have taken time to support the scheme. There seems to be a significant shortfall in the supply of housing in the area, so we think this is a good opportunity to construct a much needed new house on a site that has the support of the local community. This stone house has a contemporary feel, but using materials found widely in this area. It's not easily visible from the road and has an existing approved entrance with a 70-metre display. The house has solar panels, heat pump and high levels of insulation and only one small roof light. We hope this development can provide an exemplar to others in the local area about the future of building design in respect of both energy efficiency and accessibility. A few trees will need to be removed, mostly poor quality conifers and ash trees suffering from dieback, and a few of the trees from that 2020 report that said 12 trees had to be removed have fallen down in storms in the 4 years since that report was written. We have maintained a programme of tree management throughout our time here, and new trees will be included in the future landscaping. We've committed to purchasing phosphate credits to make the development phosphate neutral, so unlike many other proposals in this area, we're ready to move forward. We hope very much that you can support this application for all these reasons and will grant planning permission in line with the support of our parish council. Thank you for your time.
And thank you very much. I'm going to come back because, Lindsay, there was a query about trees earlier. I'd like you to make a bit of clarification on that, if you could, please.
The arboricultural impact assessment submitted said that there's going to be 12 trees. Oh. Sorry. So there's going to be 12 trees removed in the arboricultural impact assessment, but it's just been clarified that some of those trees have already gone, I believe.
Okay, thank you. So some of those trees have fallen down, so that's what we need to be aware of. Okay, thank you. Next, then, because there is no one else in public, I believe, Edric, this is in yours and Tony's division, so your comments, please.
Thank you, Chair. I obviously know the area well as division member, and also I've cycled up and down that hill many times, taking my son to and from the school when he was at Horrington School some 30 years ago. I'm well aware of the area, and I think this house is a fitting addition to the housing stock in East Horrington. I agree with Mr. Pyatt's views that side of the that side of the village is predominantly more modern houses built in the 70s, and I think this is a good addition and will be an enhancement to the village. Need to remember there are houses slightly further down between East Horrington and South Horrington, which are old social housing stock, and I appreciate you've got older houses on the left-hand side. So I think it fits in. I visited the site, I snuck into the bottom of the garden, and I think with the sort of the old ash trees that have come down and maybe will need to come down in the future, that this isn't going to affect the woodland canopy of the area. I mean, I'm probably one of the first, along with my green colleagues sat opposite, who said I don't want blooming trees coming down, but I think this is a great enhancement. And I know this isn't material consideration, but we also approved a much larger house further up the road for a business, which maybe we shouldn't have done because the roof line was a bit high, I've since realised. But I think this is a far better proposal than other things we've approved in the area, and I heartily recommend this for approval against officer recommendation.
Thank you. So I take that as a proposal, Edric. Yeah?
Yeah, it is, Chair. I'm really happy with this one. I mean, I've visited the site. I know the area very well, and I've done for a long time. But obviously, I need to see what other people say. But I would heartily recommend this. I think it's a great addition of housing stock in East Torrington. Okay, well, I'm going to throw it open to members now and see. And I think Phil was first, actually. Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Over my years of being involved in planning at Mendip, I brought three separate applications very similar to this one to the board. One was a 5-bedroom house in Chantry, one was a 3-bedroom house in Lower Mendip, and there was one in Boaters Lane, all in the middle of the countryside, all three of them. It was agreed at that time that this area was short of end-of-life living type accommodation or whole life. It's definitely short across Somerset. It's definitely short nationally. And I think this is something we should support because it will not only help the people involved with their age and whatever, but it will help the country because the cost of looking after elderly people is huge. And if anybody can do this sort of thing in an area where the parish council are in green, I think it's just an easy yes. Regards trees, I would say if they've lost trees, if they can replace any of them by planting new trees, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Rob, your hand was up just before Benty, so you can go next.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of quick questions. First of all, obviously trees. How many is coming down? Is it 2, like the public speaker said, or is it 12? And just as important, what type of trees are they? And the second question relates to phosphates. That's been mentioned before. This has been a sticking point for developments throughout the district. So has a phosphate agreement been reached with the county, or has it? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I'm going to come back to you, Lindsay, to reply to both of Rob's questions, please.
So yes, phosphate issue has been resolved, and the trees, the arboreal impact assessment submitted said 12 trees are to be removed, but some of those trees have already fallen. So there's only 2 remaining to be removed.
Can you put your speaker on, Rob, please?
Sorry, Chair, I'm just asking, do we know what type of trees they are? Somebody obviously knows.
There seems to be a little bit of informal information there. Maybe they'd like to come through, Lindsay.
Yes, I've got the impact assessment in front of me saying 12 trees, and that's the information that I've based my decision on. So.
No. What trees that in there?
Yeah, but I don't know what trees have gone.
Hold on. I think if I'm going to go a little bit off kilter here. If you look behind you, the gentleman there is about to will tell you so that you can tell us if that's okay.
Sorry. If I understand from the priority assessment, it's looking this site is aspiring to being native trees. The 2 trees that we'll bring down are alien conifers, which were deliberately put there to get rapid impact and be taken away later to leave space for the growing native trees. So it's the 2 alien conifers that will be coming out anyway, with good management of the site.
Okay, and thank you for that extra information. Thank you. So, Rob, I think that answers your question. Right, okay, I think, Benty, you are next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was the ward councillor for Boulters Lane, and it was very important for the whole family that went ahead, whether it was outside planning or not. That was very important. And this here is most certainly just as important. And I will second Councillor Hobbs's proposal that we go. We are approving this here for many a reason. And one thing is absolutely sure, trees does not come before human beings. Human beings come before most of the things in this world, in my point of view. So I will second that we go against the officer's recommendation because this here is important.
Thank you, Benty, for your contribution, and it is recognised that you have seconded Edric's proposal that we go against the officer recommendation. Anyone else have any comments at the moment? Barry, I thought you'd been quiet.
Well, I've only been quiet because I'm going to state the obvious. Well, if you drive past this piece of land where it's proposed to put this house, I doubt after it's built anybody would know it was there. It's such a large piece of land, and the house can be really well tucked into it, I think. And if there were only 2 trees to come down, would that have changed the planning officer's decision?
Thank you. I think that's a question for you, Lindsay.
From my point of view, the mapping shows it to be a priority habitat, and we would want to be protecting that. So we would need a survey to demonstrate that it's not the value of the land.
Thank you. Barry, does that answer your question? More or less, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Martin?
Just very quickly, I noticed Natural England have put some conditions on this, and one is limit to water usage, 110 litres per person per day. Who's going to measure that?
Do we have any idea how that's going to be measured?
That is a standard condition relating to the phosphates.
Ah, now it makes sense. Okay, thank you.
So it's reflected in the sort of the bathroom taps and things like that.
Showers instead of baths, that's for certain. Okay.
No further questions on that at all.
No further questions? No. Okay. So we've got a proposal from Edric. We've got a seconder in Benty, but we don't have the actual reasons, Edric.
Sorry, Chair. Okay, I think it is a sustainable location, and I don't think it's out of character for the area, and I don't think it's going to harm the arboriculture of the area, going on what I've seen from my site visit. Is that enough, Leslie, to satisfy you? Happy?
Amenity.
Thank you.
Doesn't harm amenity.
Are you happy with that, Leslie?
Yeah, and I don't think
Anna? Yeah, I can see you there. You'd like to come in?
I don't think the visual amenity is affected by where it's going to be placed on the site, as Barry's just said.
Just to clarify, obviously this site is outside of development limits where we wouldn't normally allow residential properties. So a lot of your discussion has been about the impact on trees, the design. There's been less in terms of the sustainability of the site, which is obviously the most critical concern for officers, to be fair. I'm getting a feeling that maybe part of that justification is because of the nature of the property in terms of it being on the term, but adapted and longer life dwelling. So I wonder whether that's something that we should be seeking to control by condition if you were to go ahead and approve the scheme.
Are you okay with that, Edric?
Yeah, I'm happy with that condition. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you've given your reasons. So, okay, so we will take Edric and Benty's proposal. All those in favour of their proposal to go against officer recommendation and allow the house to be built? I think that's unanimous. That makes a change this time around. So, yes, you may go and build your house. Yes. Okay, next we're going to move on to, I believe, it's planning application number 8, which is Crispin Centre, High Street. And I think, Nikki, I think you have the pleasure of this one as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hello again, everyone. This application is at the Crispin Centre in the town centre in Street. It's for 45 retirement apartments and 11 retirement cottages with associated development. Oh, wrong way. So here's the location plan. So the red line shows the outline of the application. So we've got the high street to the north with shops, and Lee Road to the right where the access is proposed. So there are commercial buildings on there and various heritage assets, including Crispin Hall, which is a feature building within the local area and of high historic value. Vestry Road to the south, and then which kind of curves round, and then a car park to the west. We've got residential properties on the southern boundary of the site. Here's the aerial, so you can see it from above with all those uses as just explained. This is an outline in purple of the street conservation area. Again, it's in two sections. So the application site is outlined in red, so it's just on the edge of the street conservation area. It's a prominent town centre site. There are various listed buildings and non-designated heritage assets near the site. There is a listed feature within the site itself, which is a mural. So that is proposed to be retained within the site in a structure, although we don't have information of what the structure would look like. There is a structure on the overall site plan of showing some sort of structure there. And then Crispin Hall on the corner there. So this is the existing elevation. So it's a former Tesco and shops. So doesn't make a huge contribution to the character of the area or the conservation area at the moment. This is an indicative illustration submitted by with the application, which I think is quite useful just to sort of get your bearings on what's proposed. So we've got an L-shaped 3-storey flatted development, and then we've got 2 blocks of cottages either side. So this green area is the private gardens for these cottages. These have small semi-private rear gardens. There's a hard standing and a small area of green space here, and a small area of sloped public open space here. So we can also see the access point here from Lee Road, and then parking all the way across, and a parking court in the middle. There's a proposed pedestrian route which would take you up from Lee Road past the library and through a gate here, through the site, and then there's another gate here into the car park, which is proposed to be locked in the evening. So the proposed site plan here, we can see the L-shaped 3-storey apartments. We can see 1 block of 2-storey cottages and another block of 2-storey cottages, the access point in here, and then a very tight turn in here to parking spaces, more parking spaces here, a bin store here behind the car parking, another bin store here, and then round here to a shared car park. We don't have a designated parking spaces here, so they would be shared, but we need to note the parking standards for flatted developments, as well as potential staff and emergency service vehicles and things like that. So this is the listed mural in here. So this is the details that we've had in terms of the structure that would sit in. There's also a mobility scooter parking area here, and so the public open space, or the shared communal open space, there's a path here, The plans show that that would be sloping down and there's a retaining wall in here. There's no access to this area here. And then there's the sort of the main resident communal area here in this patio and green area with sort of ornamental planting. Here's a floor plan of the apartments. So 1 and 2 stories, 1 and 2 bedrooms, lift, stairs, a communal room there, and a communal sort of waste storage area. That's the 2nd floor, and there's the 3rd floor. In terms of elevations, it's blue lyre stone and render. We've got Juliet balconies shown and some red Roman tiles on hipped roof. So that's on the other side. So one of the rows of terrace cottages, so you can see on that little inset on the left, it's just gone, there it is. That's these in here, so you come as you drive in. So they are, yeah, again, blue lyre and render. And this is the other row of terraces on this side. So they've got gardens facing north, but no kind of connection through. There is currently a link through the Crispin Centre, but that hasn't been retained. So connection points through would be through the pedestrian gate past the library, or a gate through into the car park. So context elevation as submitted by the applicant looking from the car park. There's some CGIs that have been submitted. Again, this is from the car park, existing and proposed. This is from Vestry Road, existing and proposed. This is the entrance point, existing and proposed. That obviously behind that would be the 3-storey flatted development behind those. So this one shows that same view from Lee Road in the access point, with the cottages in the front and the 3-storey flatted development behind. This is the pedestrian view. This is the existing and proposed. This is the tree plan. So the thick red lines show the trees proposed to be felled on the site. It's gone again. This one here is a TPO tree, which is proposed to be retained, and the tree officer hasn't got any concerns with the viability of retaining that tree. These trees here are very tall conifer trees, so they do add value in the street scene, but they are not considered for TPO formal protections. So they have been proposed to be retained within the scheme, but the tree officer is not satisfied that enough information has been demonstrated that those trees would in fact be retained. There would be pressure on them. They're very tall trees. There would potentially be some pressure to prune or fell those trees from future occupants, and the details submitted are considered insufficient to demonstrate that technical solution could be found to retain those trees. This is the proposed landscape master plan. There is a short landscape statement that sort of sets out high-level principles to proposed landscaping, but we'd usually expect to see a detailed landscaping plan, considering the number of trees that are proposed to be lost and the quality that we put on greening developments. This sort of indicates minimal landscaping. So where the site is very cramped, it's difficult to envisage that an acceptable scheme could come forward in terms of landscaping, planting, greening, to try and meet those requirements that we've got in our local plan and that are set nationally in the NPPF. So here's the proposed access point showing the visibility display. One of the reasons for refusal recommended is on the access arrangements. There are taxi ranks, taxi bays in the visibility display, which would obstruct the visibility. So there are concerns that have not been addressed in that regard, as well as the parking issues that you'll see in the report. Photos, I'm sure you all know the site well and will have been to the site. This is the site itself, and yeah, there's the access point and the view from the high street. That's the pedestrian route through by the library and in the car park. So this is on Lee Road. So we've got some, as well as listed buildings, some high quality architecture on that street, which has, we've had detailed comments from the Conservation Officer talking about the significance of this road historically. So it is a key part that's mentioned in the Conservation Area Appraisal that the Conservation Officer was particularly concerned about. This is the High Street, Crispin Hall, and just a view down to the High Street. Vestry Road, yeah, we have residential properties along there, and the car park. So in terms of updates, there's been no further comments from neighbours or consultees since the report was published. The applicant or the applicant's agent has submitted a letter stating that they disagree with the recommendations as set out in the committee report and their intention to appeal on any refused application, which they would lodge a public inquiry appeal, and the council has been notified of their intention to lodge a non-determination appeal for a public inquiry. So it is concluded that all the points raised in that letter from that agent have been addressed within the report sufficiently, and there are no changes in terms of the recommendation or the reasons. So this application is recommended for refusal. It's not recommended for refusal on principle of development. It's acknowledged that it's a brownfield site and that has substantial weight in the planning balance. We are looking to bring forward brownfield sites for redevelopment. Indeed, it's put forward for potential allocation in the emerging local plan. But the significant concerns that officers have with the proposal is around, largely around quantum of development and how cramped and highly high density that development would be. So a lot of that has then pushed on into other concerns. It's got very, very low parking levels that we've had a formal objection from the Highway Authority on. We've got significant concerns from in terms of waste collection management arrangements and how that would work, particularly in a development of this type for these proposed occupants. We've got a strong heritage objection. Trees, as I mentioned, there's a technical recommended reason for refusal on nutrient neutrality because insufficient information has been submitted to cover that. The applicant has confirmed that they would be prepared to buy credit, so that's acceptable in principle, but we haven't had the detailed confirmation of everything that's required from the ecology team and Natural England to be able to sign that off. So that's included as a reason for refusal. And the applicant has put in a case to say that the scheme would be insufficiently viable to justify any obligations, so any affordable housing or healthcare provision. So our policy requires that an applicant would pay for the council to instruct an independent expert, financial viability expert, to independently review that submission. So we were in discussions on that, but before the applicant paid for a review, there was they subsequently submitted notice of an appeal on non-determination. So that's why the application has been taken to committee as soon as possible, because the applicants made it clear that they are looking for a decision on the application. So the application has been assessed as is. The applicant has been advised to withdraw the application and submit further pre-application discussions with officers to try and overcome some of these issues, but it hasn't been withdrawn. So you are invited to make a decision, and you are recommended to make a refusal on these 8 grounds. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Nikki, for that very exhaustive presentation. And I think we should all, we'll all have taken that on board. Okay, we're going to move on to the speakers, of which we have quite a few on this application. So we'll start with objectors, which is Emma Harding, please. You have 3 minutes.
Right, good afternoon. Thank you very much. So you saw the lovely plan there. I am one of the 7 residential neighbours, which will be lovingly overlooked by the 3 stories of flats that will be built, are proposed to be built behind us. I guess where I come from with this, and I'm speaking as myself, but also as one of the 7 neighbours, one of my 7 neighbours, we're all sort of much for muchness in our what we view. We don't have an issue with the site being developed. We have an issue with what's being put there, and we have an issue with how it may be put there. The properties in Vestry Road, there's a variety of things that we're concerned about. One is being overlooked. We are the only residential neighbours. The tallest part of the development is right along and right at the back of our properties. So those lovely Juliet balconies, particularly if those trees are taken down, you'll be looking straight into our gardens. That's something that we were concerned about. We've raised it, and we're still concerned about it. The other piece that concerns us is the fact that the properties that we've got, Blue Liarstone properties, they are interesting because they are old, which means they can be fragile. So when you have demolition, because it's demolition and construction, which is quite close to our properties, we're concerned about the damage that will be done to them through vibration. We already have some issues with heavy goods vehicles going up and down Vestry Road, causing cracking and what have you in our properties. This will be much, much worse because you've got major demolition and major construction going on. So we have concerns about construction impact on the properties, our properties. The other piece is noise. Personally, I work from home, and the noise of demolition and construction will be huge. And it won't be just for a couple of months. It will be, when I was talking with Churchill, they said it will be a build of between 12 to 18 months. That's not just a couple of months of discomfort. That's a lot longer. The final piece I want to sort of say about, and we've already touched on it, is the removal of the trees. There are some very mature trees in that car park that will be taken out as part of the proposal. I wasn't aware that the fir trees or the evergreens were thinking, the really big evergreens being thinking about taking out. If they are removed, then we will have clear line of sight to the new properties being built. There will be no screening to us at all, straight into our gardens. So that's sort of what concerns us. If those concerns can be remedied, then yes, to have some development there would be great, because we know that it's a magnet for antisocial behaviour. But it's what's being put there and how it's being put there. Thank you.
And thank you, Emma. That's very good. You put yourself across quite well there. The next person is Max Freed. And you have 3 minutes as well, Max.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Max Freed, and I'm here to speak in support of the Crispin Centre redevelopment application that's been brought forward by Churchill. I'm a director of the company that owns the Crispin Centre. We acquired it in the autumn of 2022, and at that point, there were 3 remaining tenants in the centre, but it was already incredibly dilapidated. The Tesco's had been shut for 6 years, and over the following few months, the remaining tenants left. And unfortunately, that gave us no choice but to close the centre, which is how it remains today. we don't have any plans to reopen it. In 2022, the residents of Street were surveyed by the parish council on their priorities for the area, and their highest priority was the redevelopment of the Crispin Centre. And before you today is an opportunity to do just that. Churchill are proposing to redevelop and regenerate quite a complex and challenging brownfield site, which has been a blight on Street for many, many years. Churchill are a very experienced developer and operator of retirement living property who are willing, in an extremely difficult economic environment, to invest millions of pounds into Somerset and deliver much needed homes for retirees in an incredibly sustainable brownfield location next to a range of services and amenities. It's deeply regrettable that the case officer has reached the conclusion that she's presented in her report and has recommended refusal of the scheme. We fundamentally disagree with the position she has taken and are of the opinion that she is one of the few people who has taken issue with the scheme. Everyone else, from the local businesses of Street, the ward councillors, the parish council, neighbours, other consultees, seem to have reached the conclusion that the scheme will bring significant benefits to Street that will undoubtedly outweigh any harm. I urge you to seize the opportunity to regenerate this site and resolve to approve the application contrary to the officer's recommendation. Failure to do so is likely to result in this site remaining in its current state for many years to come, as there aren't any competing proposals which are likely to emerge if Churchill's application doesn't proceed. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Freed. Next, we move on to the representative of Street Parish Council, which is Councillor Peter Goater, who is no stranger to this room. Okay, Peter, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, Crispin Shopping Centre Development. So my name is Peter Goater and I'm Chair of Street Planning Advisory Committee and Vice Chair of Street Parish Council. This shopping centre is deserted and has been in decline for almost 10 years since the Tesco supermarket closed. I was involved 5 years ago as a district councillor in a study by Mendip District Council investigating if Mendip could buy it to enable development. Unfortunately, the numbers did not work at that time. The existing building is an ugly monstrosity taken over by pigeons, rats and antisocial behaviour, and not a design that fits with the neighbouring buildings. And as Max said, in a residential survey, the development of this site was the #1 item on the wish list. Failure to approve the planning application will result in further decline of the existing structure. Developers are not queuing up to develop this site, so it will remain a blot on the whole of the street. The plans for buildings detailed in this planning application are a vast improvement to the existing brownfield site and Southside car park. In addition, there are 3 flats above the WH Smith shop on the High Street, currently suffering damp issues which the developer will repair and bring back into use. This will provide additional low-cost housing. Regarding public parking, Cranhill Road car park, which is less than a quarter of a mile away, has plenty of spaces, and residents fought hard to prevent houses being built there, as we expected there was always going to lose the public parking on the Southside car park. The Street Parish Council Planning Advisory Committee still recommends this for approval.
Okay, Peter, that was very quick and to the point and well within the 3 minutes. Thank you. Next, we have Councillor Liz Lyshon, who is it's the Somerset Divisional Councillor. Thank you. You have 3 minutes, Liz.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. I need to declare that I'm a trustee of Crispin Hall, which includes the community centre to the side of Crispin Hall. As a trustee, I meet with the other trustees on a regular basis. I have had no objections from any of those other trustees, either to me personally or through the formal route. Councillor Goater has already mentioned that we withdrew the housing development plans for about 2/3 of Cranhill Road car park, and one of the reasons was our concern that half of the parking in the Southside car park's privately owned, originally by Tesco and more recently by Dealey Freed. And we knew that that parking could go at any time for redevelopment. So Cranhill Road allows long stay, is cheaper, and is popular with shopkeepers on the west end of the high street because, of course, people walk through the entire high street then. It's also used occasionally by Clark's Village for overflow car parks, say on the Saturdays before Christmas. Not often, but occasionally. The parish council, particularly the then chair, requested the access to be from Lee Road rather than to the high street. That access then goes from the proposed development past the community centre, past the parish rooms, which include the community library partnership, and out to the bus stops. However, there is still access from Southside Car Park out to the high street, and that is an area that sorely needs some development. It is a very, very plain alleyway that could be very much improved. My understanding from reading the application is that the waste and recycling for the apartments would be collected from Southside Car Park, where there is a waste room and a gate out to the car park. That's also where the Boots and the Smiths delivery lorries come in. So I have no doubt that the lorries would be able to access that in the same way as the delivery lorries do. The mural, I would not want to see the mural moved. I believe it would be very fragile. I'm sure it would be possible, but I would not want to see it removed. I'm delighted it's listed. It's felt abandoned since Tesco's closed many years ago, and I hope that it can be looked after and loved again. In Lee Road, we also have, sadly, the 1924 library building currently empty and deteriorating. We have the old Tesco building and the Crispin Centre deteriorating. I believe the nutrient neutrality can be sorted out, I hope, through the Wraxhill farm. And on one of the tall trees, I was concerned on my recent visit to see one of the big branches had clearly fallen off in some recent years. So I do think those trees need some attention. So, Chair, I totally understand the officer's reasons for recommending refusal. But I ask the committee, please, to consider how long this site has been an absolute blight on street. And the one thing that people ask me as a councillor is, when are you going to sort out the Crispin Centre and the old Tesco building? So for that reason, I support redevelopment of that site. I really hope that there is some way officers can work with the applicant to make a suitable, approvable development as soon as possible. Thank you.
And thank you, Liz. That was very good. We now have the other Somerset councillor for Street, Councillor Simon Carswell, please. And Simon, you have 3 minutes as well.
Thank you, Chair. I will repeat some of what other people said, but I shouldn't take 3 minutes. It's been 8 to 10 years since the Tesco's vacated the Crispin Centre. And the existing 1970s development is ugly. And any new development would enhance, not be to the detriment of existing heritage dwellings. The site was marketed nationally as retail space with absolutely no uptake, and it's unlikely it could ever be a retail space again. It is a real eyesore on the high street. As already stated, residents are vastly in favour of redevelopment, as evidenced by the parish survey. It is unusual for a development of 56 dwellings to have no outright objectors. There have been 3 residents who quite rightly have expressed concerns, but they were neutral comments. There was a query re EV charging, I think, in the officer's statement, and I'd just say that 8 new charging points were installed in the adjacent Southside car park only 3 years ago by Mendip District Council. I do feel that most concerns can be addressed whilst granting permission, and therefore I support wholeheartedly the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. That's very good. Okay, we have, next one is the applicant's agent, I believe, Laura Coombs-Baker. Please, you have 3 minutes as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure 3 minutes is going to be enough, but I will try. There appear to have been two key areas in discussions with the officer which have been instigated the recommendation, namely the officer's opinion that the proposal results in the overdevelopment and the proposed level of parking provision on the site. Looking at the design, the layout allows the mass of the proposed building to be broken up whilst efficiently developing the brownfield site as required by paragraph 124C of the NPPF, which requires local authorities to give substantial weight to the value of using sustainable brownfield land with the settlements for homes. The new government has made it clear that we must build homes, and this recommendation is disrupting a much needed and wanted development on the brownfield site, the complete opposite of the aims of the national policy. The CGIs which were skipped through, submitted clearly demonstrate how well the development sits within the site and harmonises with the character of the area, using materials that complement and respect its setting. This represents a high quality repair of the townscape which ought rightly and reasonably be welcomed. Turning to parking, 21 unallocated parking spaces have been provided for the apartments with a ratio of 0.46 spaces and 1 space per cottage. The applicant's independent parking evidence base shows the demand for parking at their developments is 0.28 spaces per apartment. Put simply, if the parking provision provided was not adequate, then the applicants would not be able to sell the apartments, which would jeopardise its reputation and standing as a leader in its field. Turning to the parking displacement from the Crispin Centre car park, parking surveys found that at the point of the highest parking stress on the car park, the parking demand offset from the redevelopment of the site could be appropriately accommodated within other town centre car parks. As it's already been indicated, the car park at the Crispin Centre is privately owned and could therefore be closed at any time, regardless of whether the site is redeveloped. Furthermore, the site is proposed as an allocation site within the Regulation 19 consultation currently taking place, so the parking will be removed at some point in the future. In respect of the remaining matters, in relation to phosphates, mitigation credits have already been secured through the Wraxall Yew Tree Farm site, and this can form part of the Section 106 agreement. The applicant is able to demonstrate that phosphate neutrality can be achieved. In relation to the affordable housing viability, the applicant would be happy for this to be undertaken post-committee if the committee were minded to approve or defer the application subject to affordable housing and planning infrastructure obligations being resolved, and delegate authority for the council's officers to instruct an independent assessor and to negotiate and agree the contributions accordingly. On the southern boundary, the trees are proposed to be retained, and there is a retaining wall to protect the roots of these trees. We also propose 25 new trees throughout the site, and this can be conditioned through a landscape strategy in more detail. This application is supported locally, if you have heard, and for all the reasons I have stated, we hope that you can see the benefits that this development will bring to the local economy by providing basket shoppers to street, freeing up the family housing by facilitating downsizing, and providing this much needed older person's housing, which is noted as being critical within the NPPF. I therefore respectfully request that you look to support the local council, the local wishes for this application, and grant consent for the sustainable high quality development. Thank you.
Thank you. You're only just outside the 3 minutes, so that's not too bad. Thank you very much. Okay, we have heard from all of the people, and we've also heard from the two Somerset councillors for the area and Street Parish Council. So we'll move on now straight into the questions from our questions, queries, statements, whatever, from our members here today. So who would like to go first? Benty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask, is there any way that a negotiation could take place between the tenants that will be suffering for maybe 18 months. I don't know. Is there any way that one could lift the burden for them, because they seem to be almost the victims in this case here? So if there is that, it would be appreciative. I find the building, the holes of that there, I find it disgusting, but that's my personal point of view. I can see it's got to be used for something, and houses is probably as good as anything. I would rather see some industry, but they can't be. So can we help the people that are going to suffer? If we can, then I will happily go against the officer's recommendation.
I don't think there is, Nick. Nikki, Nick, what do you have an answer for Bentley, really?
As I was outlining my reports for residential development, it's well established through case law that the impacts of construction on nearby occupants is not justification to withhold planning permission. There are conditions that could be put on for a construction management plan that could look at that, but there would always be some disruption for construction.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Nick. And that's your answer, Benty. Cheers. Edric.
I have a question for Emma. May as well make it worthwhile you driving up from the Oval. In relation to the parking, so in case someone else wants to raise this, and the number of parking spaces, it seems to be similar, if not better, than parking concerns we had on retirement living developments in Wells, where we deferred it to come up with a better one. So why are you not happy with this parking scheme when you, as a department, were happy with similar other parking schemes that raised? Can you run that one past me, please? Or I'll run that past you for a response. I think I know what you're going to say, but I just thought I want it for the rest of the committee, please.
Thanks for that. There's a couple of reasons, to be fair. Each scheme has to take into consideration where it is. This particular site is fairly distant from any grocery store. Other than Clark's Village Street actually is an anathema in that sense, in as much as it's got a thriving high street, but it hasn't got much in the way of a food stall in the centre of the village. The other issue is that there is a recent appeal decision up in Cheshire that absolutely the inspector there determined that any properties sold to over 60s, as this site is, this is a site for anybody over 60 to be able to purchase a property with a spouse of at least 55. They are determined as class C3, so the same as any other dwelling, as opposed to a different type of accommodation, as opposed to an old people's home or warden assisted or anything along those lines. It is definitely a C3 use, and therefore the Highway Authority are very much of the opinion that where we would be looking for 97 spaces, the provision of 32 is just nowhere near enough.
Okay, Edric, are you happy with that answer?
Yeah, I'm happy with Emma's response, because I knew we sort of discussed it a bit during the briefing yesterday. I wanted it for the rest of the committee. Two other things I've got. No electric vehicle charging points seems ridiculous in this day and age. I'll get that one before Martin does. Why are there no electric charging points? And people over 60 don't cycle. Where's the cycle storage? That's really got my goat, that one. I want those addressed as well.
No comment, really, from me. But Emma's going to say something for you.
The provision of electric vehicle charging points, every new development is required to provide electric vehicle charging points. It is part of building regs, and it is also part of the Somerset Climate Emergency Strategy. If you were to grant permission, it would be a requirement that is added as a condition, that EVC points were provided. And my suggestion would be that every single parking space, with the limited number of parking spaces that there are, should be providing it, regardless of the 8 that, I think it was 8, that have just been provided in the car park adjacent. That's a separate entity. With regarding to cycle storage, in my response that I made to the planning officer, it is accepted that the ages of the residents will mean that there is a lower propensity for cycling, but it doesn't mean that there is no cyclists within that age group. As I say, at least 55, probably 60. And I know that the applicants say that their average age is significantly higher than that. But we would, again, require cycle storage.
Okay, thanks. I think we got the replies there, Edric. Everybody else heard and understood what was said. Who would like to comment? Barry?
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. I think the planning officer has done an excellent job in summarising all the reasons for not approving this. They're very concise and they're very clear. And for example, there is one about the phosphate mitigation. As this application stands, the local planning authority cannot permit the proposal. So it's not for us to tell them what they can permit and what they can't permit. They cannot permit it. So I'd take the view that's an end of it. And replacing one eyesore with what I consider to be another in a cramped situation, I think was the planning officer's words. That is not a reason for going ahead with it, replacing one horrible building with another one, because they're not things of beauty, these Churchill developments. And Edric referred to the Wells Police Station development, absolute disgrace that down there. And they say, well, we can't afford to do anything to the community because it's outside the viability of the scheme. What they really mean is, well, we've got to make 25% and we're not going to dip below that, so you can't have anything. They make loads of money out of these schemes. And I think they want taking back and having another look at the whole scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Barry. I tend to have a similar opinion. Phil?
Just basically agreeing nearly with what Barry said. Where does that legally put us if they've already gone for a non-determination to the planning appeal? Or did I mishear that?
Okay, who would like to answer that? Nick, would you like to answer it, Anna, or?
Just to clarify, so the non-determination appeal was threatened. Since then, we have agreed an extension of time. So we are still within time effectively, that their time for appealing sort of jumped ahead again, as it were, because we've had an agreed extension of time. That as it may, obviously, clearly, as Nikki's outlined, there are significant issues with this scheme. It's not just a little tweak here and there. So our recommendation would be for refusal, to make it clear the full suite of issues that we've got, and for them to go back to the drawing board and look at this scheme fresh. Obviously, it is allocated in the local plan part 2. We do genuinely, like most people here, want to see something happen with the site and see it being redeveloped. It just needs to be the right scheme.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Phil. I'm just going to clear something up here. If we were to defer this for a couple of months, would we run the risk then of being running out of time, or should we do it now? Should we make the decision today?
We've got an agreed extension of time on the target date till sometime later in July, so we haven't got anything.
There's no wriggle room.
That's agreed, based on the significant levels of concern that have been identified in the 8 recommended reasons for refusal, and the limited discussion that we've had from the applicant to date. I would recommend a refusal rather than a deferral.
Thank you, Nikki. That just clears that up for members as well. Edric, you're first.
Thank you. As I was party to the Chair and Vice Chair's briefing, which gives us a prior insight to applications, Nikki said then, as she said today, there are so many reasons to refuse this. It's more than just tweaking around the edges via a deferral for a few weeks. The scheme isn't suitable. They need to come back with something far more suitable, which fit in with planning law and the planning constraints. It's not a case of go away and tweak this and tweak that and maybe stick 4 more parking spaces in and take a couple of bedrooms off. They need to come up with a viable scheme and, pay due diligence to everything that Nikki's asked them, and threatening to go to appeal because the officers upholding the law. I don't like that way of acting. I think we've got a right to make our decision, and threatening us because we're going to maybe make a decision they don't like isn't the way to go. So before I go to Benty, I'm going to recommend refusal in line with the officer's recommendation.
Okay, so I've got that from you, Edric. That's a formal declaration to go along with the officer recommendation for refusal. Thank you. We've got that. Benty.
And I will second it because had Councillor Hobbs not proposed it, I would have.
Thank you, Benty.
Benty, stop your thunder.
Martin, you wish to say
I think it's reasonable to be looking at a proposal of this kind, but there are so many reasons that have been given, outlined before, as to why this particular proposal is not acceptable. And I don't think we should accept it simply because, as Edric says, the developer will go to appeal. I'm actually offended by this sort of threat hovering over our heads, and I don't think just because the council is in a difficult situation at the moment, we should in any way comply with that kind of threat.
Thank you, Martin. Much appreciated your comments. Rob?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a very interesting one. I mean, I know the site quite well. It is clearly in need of redevelopment. It reminds me a lot of my own village of Evercreech, with a massive, great space in the middle of the place that is falling down, and has been falling down for 10 years. But it was an inappropriate development proposal to put into Evercreech, which was refused by the council. And the inspector quite rightly upheld the council's decision. And quite clearly, this is overdevelopment, simple as. I think we ought to say, yeah, please appeal by all means, that is your right. But I don't think they'll get very far. Please come back with a more sensible proposal, scale it down. Everybody wants something to succeed here. Please come back and talk to the local council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. That's really good and useful information. Okay, so everybody's had their say. We have a proposal to go along with officer recommendation for refusal from Edric and Benty. So we'll go to the vote. All those in favour of going along. Oh, I didn't even get all the words out. Okay, we're unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so at this moment in time, Churchill will not be building in street. Thank you. Okay, we dealt with that one. We're now going to move on to number. I've got that. Put my glasses on would help, wouldn't it? Number 9, which is the Barn Valley View Farm, Hinkham Hill, Backham, Mendip, in Mendip South Division. And it's for agricultural building to a residential dwelling house. And Lorna, I think this is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hopefully some couple of nice simple ones for you to finish on. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So obviously it's quite a long description of development, but the simple is that it's the conversion of an agricultural barn to a dwelling, a small extension to the residential curtilage, and the works to some outbuildings to bring them back into use as ancillary to the main dwelling. I apologise now for how faint these drawings are. They're pencil drawings that were submitted, so they are really difficult to get to appear. So as you can see, the site is outlined in red in the middle there. It is a former yard associated with the farm, quite common obviously where they're remote from the farmhouse. So it sort of looks like it's plonked in the middle of nowhere, but it is the traditional old yard as such. So this one just shows in the top the existing sort of cottage and the farmhouse, and then in the bottom left there the site. So you can see from here, there is no new buildings on site. This is all works to existing buildings. So on the bottom, your rectangle there is the existing barn, and then the other, I'll say L shape, but it's upside down. The number 7 shaped building are the outbuildings that already exist on the site. So as you can see, it's just turned slightly for this. Again, there's no additional development on the site. It's exactly as it was. Oh, they haven't come out too bad. So as you can see, you've got the main barn would be converted into the dwelling, and then down the right-hand side, the various buildings. Get my drawing so that I can tell you what the little words that you can't see say. So the top bit is the ancillary accommodation. Top right is a home office. Underneath that is a garden store, and beneath that is a garage. So they are all ancillary uses to the main dwelling. Bear with me. So these are the pencil drawings. I do apologise. So there is the barn. The barn has permission for conversion under Class Q already. So this application makes some minor amendments to what is already approved, and the amendments relate to alterations to the windows. So they're not significant. They're not increasing the footprint or anything like that. They are minor design amendments to what is approved under Class Q already. And again, you can see they are the existing buildings. The proposal is very sympathetic to what's already there. It's not, there's no new walls, there's no new materials. It's all sort of reused and sort of just enhancement of the buildings that are there. So this just gives you a bit of an aerial view of what is. So as you can see, the building there with the Class Q there, and then the other buildings that form the U shape of the traditional yard. So then this is the stone barn. This would be the ancillary sort of accommodation. On the plans is labelled as bedrooms. Oh, it's skipped, I do apologise. Again, this would be sort of to the right-hand side. So this is like the garage, the store, the office. You can see there's some old elements, some modern elements. It's not in a good state. So the proposal will bring that back into actually looking nice, although bearing in mind it isn't visible from the public realm at all. There are no footpaths nearby or anything else, but they are in a state where they are going to become derelict and abandoned. So this proposal will bring those all back into use. This is the barn that has the permission for the Class Q development already. So it just gives you a view of the improvements we are making to that under the proposal. The proposal does include not a new access to the overall site, but a track. So at the moment, the access goes, there is the existing house, and then there is like the farm access. So the proposal does include the creation of a track. So you can see vehicles use the drive there anyway, but this would just formalise that, and it's tucked up against the hedgerow. It's not visible. And again, it is farm vehicles that do use that and have used that in the past. So it's not felt that a small trackway would look an alien feature, because it's something that farmers may have viewed to do in the past anyway. So again, that just shows. So this bit is the back. So the Class Q limits the residential curtilage. So this does include a minor increase to the residential curtilage, but it isn't felt that increase will have an adverse impact on the use of the remaining agricultural land. It is very minor. I think that's. So there's the parish council have raised concerns with regards to the access. So just to confirm, it is an existing access. You can see there on the right hand side that goes into the existing residential dwelling, and the track going on up into the farm area. There's been concerns raised about like the drainage situation there. It is a country lane. You can see there is a drain it may well need unblocking, but that we would rely on, as with everything, residents to report that sort of thing so that it can be dealt with appropriately. And just out of sight of there is actually a grit bin. So there was a comment raised about when it's winter, there's surface water in it, freezes. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the rural environment. But as you can see, there is the infrastructure in place for that to be dealt with and managed. So there you go. So the recommendation is for approval.
Okay, thank you, Lorna. I've got a statement here to read out by Mr. Rob Sage. I will also note, because one of our Somerset councillors for the area was unable to attend today, is that they had concerns about the water runnage and the ice, etc., which I think you've already covered. So I'm just mentioning that now. Okay, thank you. So I will read out this one from, I think, is Backham Parish Council. So here we go. Glasses on. Backham Parish Council has three main concerns with the application for the conversion of the agricultural building at Ballyview Farm to form a dwelling house, auxiliary accommodation and other outbuildings. The first is that it sees no justification for the extension of the domestic curtilage of the barn conversion into the agricultural land to the southwest of the current agricultural buildings. I think, yeah, that makes sense. I can see what they're saying anyway. The parish council is very concerned at the creeping development into our open countryside by the extension of domestic curtilage into neighbouring agricultural land, which it has seen by the extension of domestic curtilage into neighbouring agricultural land, which it has seen at other sites in the parish where the domestic curtilage has been gradually extended into the surrounding open countryside. Okay. Second, the parish council is concerned at the loss of agricultural land to the additional access track. Finally, the parish council is very concerned that without adequate drainage, the new access track will result in additional water runoff onto Hinkham Hill. There is already a serious safety issue with Hinkham Hill during icy weather because the road is no longer pre-sorted by Somerset Highways. All routes out of Backham include steep hills that are treacherous in icy weather, and Hinkham Hill is the main route out of the village of Backham. Used by the Upton Noble school bus, it is a steep hill with a sheer drop down into Pew's Bottom Farm on the opposite side of the road from the proposed access to Ballyview Farm. In previous winters, there have been serious problems with water runoff on Hinkham freezing in icy weather and turning the smooth road surface very slippery. Somerset Highways have been working to reduce the water runoff from surrounding fields and have placed a wooden fence in the gap in the hedge above Pew's Bottom Farm, where previous a vehicle had almost gone over the edge. However, any additional water runoff from the new access will increase the risk of catastrophic accident. For these reasons, the Parish Council is recommending a refusal of this planning permission for the barns conversion at Ballyview Farm. At the very least, it would recommend no extension of the domestic curtilage and a requirement for drainage to prevent water runoff onto Hinkham Hill. That's it. Okay, there we are. So that's the people from there. Rob, you're here, and that is your ward, and I know that you're your division, and I know that you're a recent.
Sorry, we have another speaker.
We have another speaker. Oh, I didn't see that one marked here. Oh, is that Mr. Rob Sage? Is it? No, that was me, and I've just done. Oh no, we have Mr. Simon Waterfield. Sorry, I can see it now. So if you would like to speak, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, thank you. I'm the applicant, Simon Waterfield, but I'm actually mainly reading this on behalf of my planning consultant who's unable to be here today. Just to also confirm what you've just heard, the actual subject house and the small addition to the curtilage, the actual subject barn is probably 600 yards up our existing track before we even get to Hinchcombe Hill. So in terms of the actual drainage off the subject property, none would go anywhere near Hinchcombe Hill. The only part of the new access that would drain a small bit coming down, but as I say, that can be attenuated through condition and appropriately accordingly. So I really don't think that's going to be an issue. But thank you for seeing us today. And the case officers, and this is what my planning consultant would like to say, the case officers report before you provides a very good overview of the application, its policy assessment, and confirms that the application seeks to make minor amendments to the design of the already approved dwelling, as well as additional works to slightly extend the domestic curtilage and create an improved access. There is one additional point I would like to raise regarding the principle of the use. The proposal is for the reuse of rural buildings for their conversion to residential dwelling and associated works. As the case officer has stated, the principle of residential dwelling in its location has already been established and approved. However, it is worth noting the application would accord with local planning policy DP22, which allows for the residential conversion of buildings in the countryside. The DP22 contains criteria which must be met, including not adversely affecting ongoing agricultural uses, not harming the landscape or transport network, sensitive conversion of traditional buildings. The buildings must be capable of conversion without major or complete reconstruction, and roosting bats must be not harmed. As the case officer confirms in her report, these matters are satisfied or can be secured by condition. I would be very grateful if you could please bear this additional planning policy factor in mind as you come to your decision this afternoon and support the case officer's recommendation to approve the application. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Waterfield. Okay, so we now move to Rob as the Somerset councillor who's in attendance for there.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if members are aware of Batcombe, its geographical situation, but the word to describe it is hilly. I don't think anybody could argue with that. As you say, I've just come to this. This is an application that's been followed by my colleague, Councillor Sully, and she fully briefed me, and I've been to look at the site, and I quite agree with her. The actual development, not a great problem. The problem is the drainage. Hinchcombe Hill, it's not just a country road, as the officer said. It's the main entrance into a large, thriving village. And it does freeze. There is terrible problems there in the winter. I am encouraged by the applicant who says he's willing to put in some kind of drainage scheme applicant, and I think that has to be a condition so that no water from the application goes onto the hill at all. Other than that, Chair, I've got no problem with the application.
Thank you, Rob. Who else would like to speak? Benty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think that if I will propose that we follow the recommendation of the officer, providing it is clearly written that the applicant will make sure that no water falls where it shouldn't fall.
Thank you, Benty. We'll take that as a formal proposal to go with officer recommendation. Thank you. Edric?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will second Benty, but just before I do, I just want to clarify. The parish council mentioned the track taken at farm now, and it won't. I've got the aerial view up on site. I can see a track across the hedge line to the property already. I take it that's why I'm looking at the right thing. Am I? I can see a track to the north of the hedge across one of the two fields. The other one's quite close to the edge. I don't see a problem with this at all in terms of it's not going to swallow any land. It's a building in the middle of the field. It's not affecting anybody else. So just on that point, but I'm happy to second Councillor Hyde's proposal. We go with officer recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Martin, you'd like
I was going to second it.
You just seconded it. So it's been proposed and seconded by.
Sorry, Chair. Can we just clarify?
Rob,
we accept the officer recommendation with a condition to keep the water off the hill.
Yeah, I believe that was made clear by Benty. Does anybody else wish to have a speak? Anna, you wish to come in?
Sorry, if I just come in. Obviously, as Lorna set out, there's prior approval on this application, so that is a fallback position. So if you want to go as far as put a condition on in terms of drainage, you need to be satisfied that this scheme itself warrants that additional control. And if you do, I would suggest we do a fairly generic condition that just seeks the surface water drainage to be agreed by officers under delegated authority.
Okay, will you be happy with that, Benty? That's a proposal, yeah. And Edric as the seconder, you're happy? Okay, so we're okay there. Phil, I can't quite make you out. Were you? Did you want to make a comment?
I was going to say, I think it's law that with any new development, you're not allowed to have water running from the new development onto the highway. I think that's law.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, we will go to the vote already. Yeah, Anna, you wish to come back in?
Sorry, yeah, I mean, sorry, yeah, I mean, Councillor Hammond is quite correct, and therefore, I mean, in planning terms, we wouldn't normally go to control another regime through the planning process. So we'd probably be better off just putting an informative on, advising the applicant that that highway control is there, which is what we would often do. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Excellent. Okay. Yes, you can. You may come back, Benty.
Thank you very much. Maybe we should just speak to Councillor Reid and see if he is happy with that. That the law is the law, and therefore that we should just be quiet.
Well, the law is the law. But I think we should put a point of view that there should be, it should still be in there somewhere that there should be no water going on the hill. And if it's that law, we should put it in that it's the law. Please keep the water off the hill. So, and he's nodding, so I can't see there's any problem there at all.
Okay, it has to be accepted by the proposer and the seconder, and I believe they're both happy, so that's okay.
Can I clarify, please, Chair, just for the minutes? Is that an informative, as Anna has suggested, rather than a condition or an amendment to a condition? I just need to know.
I think, Leslie, that's one for you.
I think an informative.
Yeah, my suggestion would be an informative, but it's whether members agree to that.
Yeah, I just want to make clear that members are agreeing it's an informative rather than a condition.
Okay, now we're happy. Now we've got all the finer details adjusted and sorted. We will go to the vote. All those in favour of Benty's and Edric's proposal? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. You will be able to build your house. Thank you. Cheers. And we now have to move on again to Lorna, this one is you as well. 16 High Street, Shepton Mallet.
Right, thank you, Chair. The technology has not failed me, touch wood. Okay, yeah, now it's all going to go horribly wrong. Okay, so this is a listed building application for the installation of an extractor and flue.
on a property in Shepton Mallet High Street. I say property because the ground floor is retail, but it has permission for a change of use in place already. And then the first and second floor are residential already and have been for many years. So it is in the middle of Shepton High Street, as the drawing doesn't show it very well, but the form opposite just offset slightly to for what is now the Art Bank Cafe. So it's just in that, as it goes up and it narrows ever so slightly there. So very central location. The little circle in the top right is the Market Cross. So this just shows the building. It is a listed building and we are within the conservation area, hence why we've got a listed building application. There have been relatively modern extensions to the rear, which are the bits that sort of stick out, and actually quite a few of those along there have such. There is access to the rear for access to the residential, but it's not in the public value. It's a challenge to see, which you'll see from my photographs. So for the listed building consent, we're looking at the installation of a flue, which is that little black dot in the corner coming out of the modern extension. So you can see here from the elevation plans, the big, the red on the right hand side, the red flue, that is an existing flue belonging to another hot food takeaway. So that is in place and has been for many years. You can see the flue has been designed to go up past the residential, the windows. And environmental health have raised no concerns. But as we say, this is the listed building application. So that was all dealt with as part of the planning application. The flue was given planning permission in line with the change of use. So we are purely looking at the impact on the listed building, but that's just for the knowledge that there haven't been concerns for environmental health. As you can see, it is just a small element of historic fabric that would be required to remove, but it isn't. It's part of a listed building, but it isn't truly historic because it is a modern felt roof extension there. Obviously, there would be requirements for it to be attached to the listed building, and the condition has been recommended to get the details of that. The Conservation Officer has no issues with the proposal, just the fine details of how the brackets as such would be attached to the listed building. She's got a preference of how that is done, so we need to confirm that that is how it would go through. Oh, bear with me, it's skipping without me. So as you can see, that's the existing, when talking about the flat felt roof. Unfortunately, we have this block of listed buildings. We need to bring them back into use. A lot of them are empty shops. So with the listed building consent, we look at the ensuring the preservation of those, and obviously the preservation is being used rather than being sort of abandoned as such or disused, and that includes all elements of it, not just, so just because there's residential, we still need to look at ensuring the whole building is preserved.